Many years ago, the monsters on this continent began to disappear. At first, I thought they were already extinct, but after investigating, I discovered that it wasn't the case. The monsters that disappeared have moved to a different dimension. Movement between dimensions. It was a long-standing ambition for wizards like me. I don't know why such a thing happened to the monsters. But now that it's helped with my research, the reason doesn't really matter. I'm done setting up the coordinates. And the magic spell is connected too. With my magic wand, which was crafted over a long period of time, I opened my arms toward the ceiling. I'm lucky to be able to use this dungeon called the Great Labyrinth. Once I use my magic spell here, moving between the dimensions won't be a difficult task. Let's go. When I shouted out loud and activated my spell, the surroundings turned blue. It was like the phenomenon seen just before the monsters were transported to the other dimension. I closed my eyes as I confirmed that my research was correct. I believe that I'll be in a different dimension once I open my eyes. However, the surrounding area remained quiet as time passed. Feeling the chilly wind pass by the sleeves of my shirt, I slightly opened my closed eyes. When I re-examined my surroundings, only an empty field was seen, not dungeons. What could this mean? It didn't take long for me to realize. Could it be, is this dungeon dimension deserted? At the same time, the wizard was not the only one who felt absurd. Hunter Kang Jin-hyeok arrived home and checked his attic. He lost his words as he saw the result of the actions of the wizard who failed to move dimensions. What the FK is this? A labyrinth that he thought could only be seen in movies. Anyone would be surprised to find such a thing inside their attic. The dawn wind was cold. It's not yet winter though, as it was only October. The dawn where the sun was yet to rise was cool enough to bring out white breath. Olympic Park, first gymnasium in Songpa-gu, Seoul. Despite the cold weather, there were many people lined up in front. They lined up at dawn just so they could see their favorite celebrities. Kang Jin-hyeok was in a sales booth right next to the place, and he was transporting water bottles for business. On his way to the truck, he saw a packed line in front of the gymnasium. He stopped in his tracks and admired the sight. He was envious that people could be immersed in such things. As Kang Jin-hyeok stood in place for some moments, someone bumped into him. When he turned his head, it was a Senpai from his part-time. Senpai means someone with seniority. Why are you spacing out over there? Just a moment, we have to hurry. Not even half of the job is done. Yes. When his Senpai loaded the truck with the water bottles, Jinhyuk got on the passenger seat. The Senpai started the truck and moved off. He glanced at Jinhyuk. While he was deep in his thoughts, Jinhyuk's sleeves caught his eye. Hey, aren't you cold in this weather? I'm a hunter. Did you forget that hunters endure warm and cold weather well? Does that apply to D ranks too? I know, lucky right. Thanks to it, my air conditioning fee stays low. Kya, I'm jealous of you. The conversation was cut off after a while, and the awkward silence settled again. The Senpai's personality makes him unable to stand the awkwardness, so he asked something that he was curious about. Why did you take on this part-time job when you're already a hunter? What do you think? It's because I got no money. He belatedly realized that it was a rude question. Even if he tried to wrap up the conversation in a hurry with an awkward smile, the damage was already done. Instead, the Senpai came up with something to console Jihyuk. It would be nice if guilds give up their monopoly, right? No ways do that. The guilds monopolized the areas where monsters usually appeared. They weren't satisfied with such monopoly. They even refused to yield the monsters that occasionally appear in other places too. For powerless D-rank hunters like Kang Jin-hyeok, there's no way to hunt monsters, so they have to pursue a different path from being a hunter. He had no choice but to take on a part-time job. Kang Jin-hyeok let out a low sigh. It's been difficult these days, that's why I've been acting worse. Why? Did something happen between the guilds? Kang Jin-hyeok looked puzzled at why his Senpai was curious. He stared at his senior with eyes that seemed to ask, how can you not know? You haven't heard of the news. What news? Since about a month ago, a crazy killer had been running wild with this crazy concept of catching and killing hunters from large guilds. Upon hearing Jinhyuk's explanation, the Senpai laughed helplessly. Are you saying that those can't catch a single killer? Yeah, that's right. When asked if the criminal has been caught, they make several excuses with their polite little voice, but in reality, they just don't want him to be caught. The existence of a killer was just an excuse to trample over their opponents. Those people have no intention of catching the criminal. It's foolish to think that they'd be beaten and killed by a simple weak and idiotic murderer. They seem to be convinced that they're unbeatable. The more I hear about them, the crazier they seem to me. Same here. If he had known that being a hunter would result in this situation, he would have picked a different path. Kang Jin-hyeok had dreamed of succeeding as a hunter, but he was in the same pathetic place for 3 years already. Usually, a person who suffers this much would experience some sort of reward. Why doesn't the sun shine in his life? Just when does he have to wait for an opportunity? While having such thoughts, Kang Jin-hyeok heard a scream in his ear. It wasn't from a single person, but a number of different screams. The Senpai also heard it as he saw visible agitation in his face. Hey, the concert start is still in a few hours, right? What do you mean? The screams didn't sound like shouts of joy. It sounded like a scream shouting for help in fear. Usually, those kind of screams are heard when there are cases of terrorism or when a monster appears. It's either of the two. Either way, it was a big opportunity for Kang Jin-hyeok. Finally, it happened in the place where he was working part-time. It's an incident that happened where most people are either asleep or out of it. Isn't it true that heroes are made during a crisis? Kang Jin-hyeok felt that his opportunity had come. He took out the aluminum bat from the worn-out inventory that he carries around in case things like this happen. Senpai, go run away. What about you? Don't tell me you're going over there. Of course I am. Alone. It's easier to make money if I'm alone. Even if other hunters arrive at the area, they'd only compete among themselves. That's why it's better to go hunt alone. Should I go help you? I've been working out recently, so I'm confident that I gained some strength. Kang Jin-hyeok scoffed at his Senpai's words. You know that monsters can only be caught by hunters, right? It wasn't a question of strength. There's a special wavelength that surrounds the monsters, so civilian attacks and even attacks from conventional weapons won't work on them. Only hunters have the stats that could penetrate that wavelength. Please evacuate and don't do anything. Stupid. Kang Jin-hyeok ran in the direction of the screams with no hesitation. As expected, there were monsters attacking people. He smiled unknowingly. With that large number of monsters, he would be able to live comfortably for at least a year without worrying about money, or even if he catches small ones. Okay. Kang Jin-hyeok dashed forward with momentum, but a certain man stood in front of him before he could even reach the monsters. Kang Jin-hyeok slipped to the side of the president that was blocking his way. He was a mere D rank, but he can attack the monsters with his raw strength. Egu. As the president fell backward, Kang Jin-hyeok dashed towards the monsters. However, he couldn't take another step forward. Someone from behind tightly grabbed Jinhyuk's shoulder. Oh, the hand that was grabbing his shoulder immediately pulled him back. It was like being hit by a strong wave. Kang Jin-hyuk's body was pulled back with no resistance. And then he was thrown towards the ground with force and he rolled aggressively. The person who pulled Kang Jin-hyuk spoke to him in a cold tone while he collapsed. Don't think about getting a spoonful here. Get lost. Jinhyuk raised his head to see a flock of hunters gathering in the area. Those people wore all black clothes and a jacket, and a uniform pattern was drawn on their shoulders. Jinhyuk knew that it was the symbol of the Titans, one of Korea's largest guilds. Of course I'm going to get a spoonful here. I arrived here first. Why does it matter that you arrived here first? This place belongs to our district. What kind of law permits that? What the? You're insisting that there's a law that permits the person who arrives at the scene first to have control over an area. Is that law determined by the association? What On Do-yoon, Titan's deputy guild leader, meant was simple. If the opinion of both sides is not really determined by law, then the people who were stronger and more influential would be the ones who are correct. That's what On Do-yoon wanted to convey. What kind of is that? Jinhyuk got up on his feet. He couldn't stand the sight of these Titans hunting the monsters. Stop right there. Jinhyuk, swayed by his strong emotions, held his bat and rushed towards On Do-yoon. Even if all the monsters are taken away by them, he wanted to strike that annoying face just once. However, he was the one beaten instead. A fist struck his left cheek and he once again collapsed on the floor. The familiar texture of the asphalt scratched Kang Jin-hyuk's skin mercilessly. All you trash coming for me. On Duyun bit his tongue and looked visibly uncomfortable as he whispered an order to a hunter that was beside him. If that jerk tries to rush in again, beat him up and kick him out. Understood. Jinhyuk heard what they said and clenched his fists. He knew it in his head. The Titans was a guild that only accepted hunters above B rank. It's common sense that a D rank hunter won't be able to overpower such guild members. Today was the first time he personally experienced it with his body. He realized the true situation of a D rank hunter. When he felt the pain in his body, he didn't think of fighting anymore. With all his dreams and expectations falling apart, Kang Jin-hyeok moved on lifelessly. Even when his Senpai asked him what's wrong, he didn't answer. He just silently focused on what he could do at the moment. At this moment, all Jinhyuk wanted to do was to cheer on the killer that vies for the large guild hunters. Even if he knew that it was morally wrong, it was the only way for the D-rank hunter to console himself. However, he needs more than 30 million won to do something. But all Kang Jin-hyeok had was his earnings for today. It's a tight life to live from paycheck to paycheck. It's almost impossible for him to save up 30 million won. When he arrived home, he could only let out a swear word that sounded like a sigh. He trudged himself to the living room and just lay down on the floor. Jinhyuk looked around his 40-square-meter apartment and sighed. The apartment he lives in looks spacious because he was living alone. It was difficult to pay rent with his daily wage. Nevertheless, Jinhyuk wanted to live in this house even though he has to overwork himself every day. He still had some vague hope that he would succeed one day. But that hope disappeared today. He could never succeed as a D-rank hunter. Not when he doesn't have any capital. I should just leave this apartment this month. I should go live in a place that's more suitable for my situation. That's what Jinhyuk thought. It's only realistic to quit being a hunter and just slowly save money to find a better job. Sigh. Jinhyuk made a decision, but he felt even more depressed because it wasn't what he wanted for himself. His frustration grew as time went by. Right then, he heard something drop in his attic. What is that? Did the stacked items fall off up there? Kang Jin-hyeok hurriedly stood up and opened the door to the attic. Oh. He lost his words when he saw what was inside his attic. There were stone walls, just like in games or movies, intricately intertwined to form some sort of labyrinth. He had no idea why such a thing would appear in his attic. When he approached to take a closer look, he was shaken as a goblin suddenly appeared in front of him. He was so surprised that he fell backward and toppled over the items that were stacked in his attic. During all that, the goblin's attention wasn't on Jinhyuk. The goblin continued towards him. The same was true for the other goblins behind the first one. Among all the goblins, none of them were looking directly at Jinhyuk. Could it be, they can't see me? It seems like he can see inside the labyrinth, but those inside the labyrinth couldn't see him. He carefully tried to pass his hand through. And it did. He didn't feel any resistance. He pulled out his hand and burst into laughter. The labyrinth had monsters inside. Kang Jin-hyeok knew exactly what it meant for him. A dungeon appeared in my attic. Kang Jin-hyeok closed his attic door and proceeded to his living room. He sat in a chair and looked like he was deep in his thoughts. Anyway, it's impossible to know why or how a dungeon randomly appeared in his attic. The matter that he was thinking about now was, how do I deal with this labyrinth? The most realistic and safe move was to report this matter to the association. But there's no way Kang Jin-hyeok would choose to do that. According to the manual, that decision would obviously be the best. But that was a matter of the association's policies. And it was the worst thing to do if Kang Jin-hyeok was to take into consideration his own interests. If the association finds out the truth, I'd be kicked out right away. Although monsters always existed in this world, the matter of dungeons was new and had never been discovered. If the association finds out about the dungeon, they'd order an investigation immediately. The investigation would be launched with only the elite hunters dispatched by the association, and Kang Jin-hyeok, a D-rank hunter, would be banned from accessing it. Kang Jin-hyeok would receive only a few rewards in return. Do they think I'm crazy that I'll just give this up like nothing? Even though it's a house that he rents monthly with his wage, this place was Jinhyuk's home and that attic is his property as well. However, there's a way that he can prevent that from happening. Kang Jin-hyeok remembered today's events with the Titans. They didn't spare even a single monster, and those people in the association belong in the same category as them. The association is responsible for this since they were the ones who neglected the tyranny of the large guilds. He's going to turn over the dungeon to such people. Just imagining it made his blood boil. If it's possible, Kang Jin-hyeok wanted to make the dungeon exclusively for himself. However, for that to happen, he has to verify something first. Those monsters, they're unable to cross over here, right? The goblin doesn't recognize the attic environment at all. However, just because the goblin doesn't recognize it doesn't mean it can't cross over. Kang Jin-hyeok had no choice but to check with his own body. He grabbed his baseball bat and entered the attic again. It's going to be a big problem if I'm able to cross. Kang Jin-hyeok's hunter rank was only D rank. His limit was only 2 to 3 monsters that he can take head on. As soon as his limit is reached, it's going to be a big problem for him if monsters were to come out of the attic. Please, please, Jinhyuk prayed earnestly in his heart as he entered the attic. When his body completely entered the dungeon, an alarm rang in his head. You've entered the dungeon. Current location: Floor 1 Goblin's Labyrinth. A message appeared in front of Jinhyuk. He expected this. As expected, this place was a dungeon. Screech. While Jinhyuk read the notification, a goblin inside the labyrinth started approaching him. He realized it when he heard the goblin screech. Screech. When the goblin rushed towards him while waving a stone axe, Jinhyuk ran away. He can take on a single goblin by himself, but he had something to confirm first right away. Kang Jin-hyeok hurriedly exited the dungeon and arrived back to his attic, which left the goblin puzzled. Then, the goblin stood on the boundary between the attic and the dungeon and waved his stone axe. The place which the goblin hit made a sound as if there was a transparent wall. Not only can the goblin not see through, he can't come here as well. His face brightened when he saw this. Now that he confirmed that it was safe, there's only one thing left for him to do. Kang Jin-hyeok swung his bat at the goblin immediately right when he re-entered the dungeon. Screech. The goblin, hit hard by the aluminum bat, screamed and collapsed. It seems like Kang Jin-hyeok wanted to make a porridge out of the goblin since he hit his head over and over. Screech. Screech. After a few moments, the goblin who screamed on and on was completely beaten. At the same time, Jinhyuk felt his strength rising. Level up. As he leveled up from level 3 to level 4, Kang Jin-hyeok felt touched. It was his first time eliminating an enemy since he became a hunter. He shouldered the burden alone. Only by himself. He hunted the monster without worrying about his set limit. Kang Jin-hyeok couldn't suppress the laugh that formed inside him. It's been 3 years. He stayed in level 3 for 3 years, but just catching one goblin like this made him level up immediately. Jinhyuk realized just how ridiculous the large guilds were. They don't have an ounce of conscience in them. Right now, he could acquire 30 million won just by catching this goblin alone. Large guilds dominated these kinds of monsters all the time, so they must have earned a lot of profits. It's because these guilds monopolized the monsters that their reward is so expensive now. Monsters' corpses are expensive, so equipment and items used to hunt them are naturally sold at high prices as well. Hunters below C rank, who lack money and capital, are in a continuous trap of becoming poorer. Jinhyuk grew angrier and angrier as he thought of the crimes of these large guilds. Just this morning, he felt helpless and couldn't do anything, but it's different now. An opportunity, in the form of this dungeon, came to him. As long as such natural luck comes to him, he has no more reason to be heartbroken or resentful. Kang Jin-hyeok visited the association's trade market. Even though it's already night, the trade market was quite crowded. Hunters were selling their loot and buying items for their next hunt. Since the market has a lot of customers, the number of employees here was not small as well. After 10 minutes, his turn finally came. What are you selling here? The appraiser that welcomed Jinhyuk looked like a middle-aged man with a lot of experience. Instead of just answering, Jinhyuk took out the monster's corpse from his inventory and placed it on the table. One goblin. This was a very uncommon material here, even in a place where numerous hunters gathered. The appraiser looked through the corpse presented by Jinhyuk and looked disappointed. I see you don't have a lot of hunting experience. What? How could you know? It's obvious from the way that the bones are almost powdered. The goblin arm picked up by the appraiser hung like a sobbing mollusk. If you catch them like this, their value falls by a lot. Next time, it's better if you just aim for their vital point. He spoke in a harsh tone with no courtesy to the customer, but his words itself were good experience-based advice. The appraiser finished twice as fast as the other ones, and he gave his appraisal to the goblin. For this corpse, I can't give you more than 3.2 million won. It was a low price, with only 200,000 increase from the minimum. But Jinhyuk accepted the result with no hesitation. It's understandable because of the damaged intestines, useless bones from severe fractures, and others. All the points that the appraiser raised were reasonable. I'll sell it at that price. Good. All that's left to do is for you to tell me where you caught this monster, and then I'll confirm and deposit it for you. Where I caught the monster. Do I really have to tell you that? I know it's a bit troublesome, but it's the law, so you have to comply. Kang Jin-hyeok is placed in a dilemma because he can't just reveal that he caught the goblin in the dungeon. Should I say that I caught it in the Olympic Park? It's a reasonable excuse to say that a monster escaped while the Titans were off guard. However, he couldn't put that idea into practice. When he turned his head in the direction of the crowd, he saw a group of hunters entering the store. What's that? Seeing that they wore a similar design of the Titans' uniform, it was clear that they were hunters from some guild. At the sight of those hunters, the appraiser hit his forehead and sighed. I see you've come. Looking at the appraiser's reaction and the hunters' harsh expressions, it seems like they never came here for a good purpose. And that hunch was completely right. A hunter skipped right to the front, right beside Jinhyuk. Oh, even before asking the reason why Jinhyuk was here, the hunter grabbed his back. Is it you? What? Are you the one who caught a monster in our hunting territory? Kang Jin-hyeok was flustered and couldn't give a proper answer. He was about to say that he caught this monster in Titan's territory, so he felt like he was stabbed in the head. Fortunately, the appraiser defended Jinhyuk, who still couldn't open his mouth. He's not the guy you're looking for. So which one is it? It's the blonde guy chatting around over there. A man laughing and trembling, without even noticing that the store had gone noisy, was seen in the direction where the appraiser pointed. The man holding Kang Jin-hyuk's neck let go immediately and headed towards the blonde guy. And then, he flipped the man's shoulder and faced the guy towards him. AHK. The blonde was hit by a flying fist to his face and passed out. He couldn't even get up as another man had kicked him. AHK. Cough. When I saw the assault take place, the colleague who was just talking to the blonde man came towards us suddenly. What are you doing? Shut up if you don't want to die. What? The blonde man's colleague was about to rush in. However, the guild members approached much faster than he could. This man hunted monsters in our guild's area without permission. If you don't want to end up like him, stay in your lane. When the guild hunters spoke with their fierce eyes, the blonde man's colleague took a step back. The scene of assault at the store ended only when the beaten man could barely catch his breath. They stopped hitting him when they saw that he might die with another hit. It's because of this vicious event that he can't just open his mouth. The hunter grabbed the blonde's hair and forced him to raise his face. Hey, were you walking around in our territory? Perhaps you're eyeing to kill us. What nonsense is that? The blonde tried to say that the hunter was mistaken, but the hunter hit his head before he could say anything. You could have been the crazy killer that's running around these days. Let's patrol around and investigate for a bit. Sounds good. The hunter asked the blonde man, who couldn't even speak as he had already fainted. Then, they finally left the store and abandoned the blonde man who couldn't even talk properly. After the hunters from the guild left, the whole store erupted with a sigh of relief. The appraiser, who witnessed the whole scene, clicked his tongue. They just rip off the money and leave calmly. They even go after things as ridiculous as this. The appraiser gave Jinhyuk some advice. If you don't want to end up like that man, don't even think of hunting on those guilds' territory. Kang Jin-hyeok was speechless. It doesn't make sense that they monopolize the country, but how could they beat up a person so mercilessly just because he caught a monster in their area? Kang Jin-hyeok felt chills in his spine. Even a guild that's not as famous as the Titans can do such a thing. What more if the Titans hear that he crossed their territory to hunt a monster? Maybe his legs wouldn't even be left intact. How did that guild know where to find the blonde man? What do you think? All guilds of a certain size have access to our servers. Did that man who got beaten up say where he caught the monster? If you get caught lying about where you caught the monster, your hunter's license will be confiscated for the rest of your life. Kang Jin-hyeok thought that all of this was because he lacked power. He needed more power and strength to live the life that he wants without worrying about those large guilds. We'll see. Kang Jin-hyeok had his own dungeon. As long as the dungeon was with him, he could train and be as strong as he wanted. All he needed now was time. How are you gonna prove it to me in a place like this? When asked by Kang Jin-hyeok, the dwarf picked up his luggage and spoke in a strong voice. Follow me. Where are we going though? Come and you'll see, kid. The dwarf's anger could reach the tip of his hair because Jinhyuk kept calling the Oriharukan, the metal of dreams, a cheap metal. As Jinhyuk was walking behind the dwarf, they discovered an unusual place shortly after. A huge furnace, anvil, and numerous hammers and equipment that did not fit into the setting of the maze-like labyrinth were seen. The setting was a stereotypical appearance of a blacksmith's equipment. What's with that lost expression? Did you fall in love with my house? Why your house? In this kind of place? It's pretty annoying when monsters come around sometimes, but it's a pretty good place to live in, especially with the quality ore, round here. You have a very unique standard of living. It was a soft way of seeing, are you crazy? But the dwarf accepted it as a compliment. I know, right? I think it's a very creative idea too. The dwarf laughed heartily. When he remembered that he was in the middle of making a bet, he coughed and put on a serious face. He put his luggage on a desk and reached his hand out to Jinhyuk. Give me that bat. What are you going to do with it? Oh please. Stop with that asking and just give it to me. Jinhyuk handed over his bat while suppressing some insults in his throat. He thought that the dwarf was crazy. Don't try something weird and make it useless in the end. You fool. Do you think I'm gonna do this as if I don't know that the Oriharukan is a precious metal? What are you doing there? I'm almost done, so just sit tight and shut up. No, you have to explain what you're doing. You're not changing my bat into another item, are you? Despite Jinhyuk's loud shouts, he heard no response from the other side. As the other side kept its silence, Jinhyuk started knocking on the door recklessly. Bang bang bang. Soon, the sound of his knocks resonated throughout the blacksmith's room. When the door opened, the dwarf took off his glove and it flew right to Jinhyuk's face. Jinhyuk covered his face after it was hit loudly. You're so impatient. Can't you wait for just one moment and stop being jerk for once? If you just explained to me before going into that room, this wouldn't have happened. What the fooks? If I told you what I was doing, would you believe me? The dwarf shouted roughly and held out the bat. Look at this. Kang Jin-hyeok took his bat and observed it. Are you sure this one's my bat? The color turned red. That's the characteristic of an Oriharukan. It's a weak and delicate metal if it's unprocessed, but it becomes stronger and redder through enchantment. Enchantment. Jinhyuk doubted his own ears. As far as he knows, when a special effect is used on an item, it is said to be enchanted. Enchanted items were very rare and only dropped by superior monsters of a rank or higher. Even if it was a normal item, an enchanted item can be sold several times more expensive than a rare item. He can't believe that there's someone who can enchant an item manually. Jinhyuk's perception of the dwarf has changed. He thought that the dwarf was a mentally ill guy, but he turned out to be a great talent. Jinhyuk held the bat with an excited face. Legendary baseball bat. Rank. Legendary. Explanation. A common aluminum baseball bat reached a legendary status after repeated enchantments. Added effects. Durability. S rank. High instinct. Automatic withdrawal. Jinhyuk jumped in surprise as he checked the item's information. The other effects were amazing too, but his attention was focused on the S durability. Tens of millions of won was the price of even just a B rank durability, what more for an S rank? At this rate, it's going to be worth so much more. His B rank durability weapon is. Even selling just this one item, he'd be able to live comfortably for 3 generations without lifting a finger. It's like winning a lottery that turns the tables, while automatic withdrawal was the ability of the item to return to its owner when it falls off. Is it impossible to change the target of the automatic withdrawal effect? The dwarf nodded when Jinhyuk asked the question. You'll get in trouble if that item gets stolen, so I put that effect in for you. Upon hearing the dwarf's response, Jinhyuk made a complicated expression. He was thankful for it, but it meant that he could never transfer or sell the bat to others. It's a bit disappointing that I can't sell it despite its superior stats. The disappointed Jinhyuk suddenly remembered something. If I bring you another Oriharuken, will you be able to enchant it just like you did with this one? That's easy enough. But I can't do it right now. What? Why though? I ran out of materials to do the enchantment. That was a very disappointing answer. There were lots and lots of aluminum outside this dungeon, so he could have brought in as much as he could. Then can't we just gather more materials? You can get some by searching through this dungeon. Really? Jinhyuk had his eyes wide open. You'd be able to create more things like this if you had more materials, right? That's right. It's possible if you bring me the right materials. The dwarf wondered why Jinhyuk was so excited. It would make a big difference when the ordinary Oriharuken goes through the enchantment process. He thought that Jinhyuk was just living inside a vague dream, but that was not the case. Jinhyuk burned with more motivation as he discovered another reason to explore this dungeon. Jinhyuk parted ways with the dwarf with the excuse that he had something to do. He then exited through his attic. He knew that just because he felt tremendous motivation, he can't just keep going at it without much thought. For now, he had to prepare thoroughly because he still had little knowledge about the dungeon. First, I should sell this goblin corpse and buy a new inventory. For him to be able to stay in the labyrinth for an extended period of time, he needed a steady inventory with lots of slots. But how am I supposed to sell these? It's impossible to sell it without disclosing the dungeon's location. The association's unreasonable policy prevented other hunters from getting loot, so Jinhyuk was faced with a huge barrier. Should I even try the black market? There's an illegally operated market that hosts all sorts of transactions. To sell the goblin's corpse without revealing the dungeon's location, he had no choice but to visit the place which he never thought he would visit. The person who contacted Jinhyuk appeared right on time. Lee Junkyal internally snorted upon seeing Kang Jin-hyuk's face. He said the corpses were intact, but this guy looks like a total beginner. Jinhyuk wanted to show a confident attitude by straightening his shoulders and back, but it just made him look more immature. In Lee Junkyal's eyes, Jinhyuk looked like a tame herbivore trying to bluff by making his body look bigger. Can we check the goblin corpses first? Jinhyuk seemed flustered because they skipped the normal greeting first. Are transactions usually done like this? Although he was a bit rude, Junkyal's request wasn't unreasonable. Jinhyuk quickly regained his composure and took out the goblin corpses one by one, just as Lee Junkyal requested. Lee Junkyal and Jinhyuk's expressions changed gradually as the goblin corpses piled up one by one. Junkyal didn't have much trust in Jinhyuk's skill, so seeing real goblin corpses in good condition surprised him. That's 15 right. There was no need to count them with their fingers. There were exactly 15 goblin corpses lying side by side on the parking lot floor. At what price did you want to sell them? After he confirmed that the customer wasn't playing with them, Junkyal took the matter seriously. When the negotiations began, Jinhyuk said the price he was thinking of. Including the holy stone, how about 5 million won total? The head is severely damaged, so how about 3 million? Tisk. Hey, no one even uses a goblin head. These guys' faces are so ugly, so even if they weren't damaged, you'd have no use for them. Jinhyuk burst into laughter unknowingly, but he feigned ignorance when he felt Junkyal glare at him. Then how about 3.5 million? 4.5 million. I'm not selling it below that price. He's selling it for 4.5 million, way below the expected price of 7.5 million for these pieces of corpses. Jinhyuk asked a question, oblivious to what Junkyal was thinking. So, you won't be able to give me 5 million won since I didn't reveal the information. That's right. It's gonna be hard for me to offer you more than 4 million. Junkyal had a smile on his face. There was no prior agreement that they would give up on the transaction just because the other doesn't want to reveal the information he wanted. He wants the information, and he wants it for a cheap price. It's like catching two birds with one stone. No one would survive this job if they were weak-hearted. There's no need to think about it so deeply. I bet other businesses would offer you the same thing we are offering. Lee Junkyal spoke confidently, but it's obviously a bluff. He had no way of knowing that information. Although it was annoying, it's better than opening an uncertain deal at the expense of millions of won. I'll think about it first. Kang Jin-hyeok picked up the goblin corpses and refused the offer. As the goblin corpses returned the Jinhyuk's inventory one by one, Junkyal's internal conflict intensified. Should I just concede to him? It's quite a waste to miss this opportunity because the quality and size of the products were good. However, he knew that he would lose the lead in future transactions if he turned back on his words here. He has to choose whether to take this loss and hope for future transactions with other people or give up having big gains for now. Junkyal hesitated. If we lose him to a different organization, we'll be in another crisis. Lee Junkyal made up his mind and was about to give Jinhyuk his deal. However, at the entrance of the parking lot, one of Junkyal's subordinates ran towards them with a flustered face. A monster appeared, Hyung him. What? Impossible. It was hard to believe that monsters, who numerous hunters look for with their eyes wide open, appeared in a place like this just in time. Junkyal realized that he had overlooked one fact when he saw the goblins' corpses laid out. The corpses attracted other monsters. One of the tricks that guilds use to attract other monsters was to lay out monster corpses. The success rate of this method was less than 10%, but it's clear that it works. We're so unlucky. They never imagined that this moment would be the 10% probability. It was already late when they realized it. Lee Junkyal and his men panicked as they watched the monsters enter one by one at both the entrance and exit of the parking lot. Oh orcs, hurry and contact the association. We'll all die at this rate. I already did that. How long can they endure against the orcs before the association sends hunters? There were at least 2 orcs that B-rank hunters could catch. If they make the wrong move, it might result in them being ripped open. Hey, you're a hunter, right? Do something. Jinhyuk was surprised at Lee Junkyal's shouts. What should I do? Although he leveled up inside the dungeon, his current level was only 15. There's no way that a D-rank hunter like him will be able to easily face the orcs that even B-rank hunters struggle with. But the orcs had no intention of showing any mercy. The 2 orcs rushed in, screaming at Jinhyuk, who was holding the goblin corpses. "Yua!" The orc charged to him like a tank as he swung the club he was holding with explosive power from his heavy body. If he gets hit with such great force from the orc, he's closer to being dead meat than the corpses he held in his inventory. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Kang Jin-hyeok would be just fine. Kang Jin-hyeok grabbed his bat, as if it was attracted by something. So this is the high instinct effect. Aside from the fact that it can detect enemies, he didn't know that it makes him automatically defend himself. Jinhyuk was at ease because the baseball bat blocked the enemy's attack on its own. He swung the bat without hesitation before the orc could even regain himself. Kiuo! The orc was hit on his shin, and it screamed loudly as it collapsed. Junkyal was surprised to see the leg of the orc that had been bent just like a reversed joint. He broke the orc's bone in one hit. Orc bones were harder than titanium alloys, and their legs were way thicker than adult humans. It's difficult to crack it even with a great amount of power. Only rank hunters can break it in one blow. I thought this guy's an amateur. Kang Jin-hyeok himself was also surprised. The durability of the enchanted bat had a lot more power than he thought. It's not just durable, it causes a lot of damage as well. Jinhyuk received numerous level-up notifications when the breathless orc fell on the floor. His level soared from 15 to 27, but it's still too early to celebrate. Shwa! The other orc, who saw his dead companion, opened his eyes widely and rushed towards him. This time, Jinhyuk was not flustered at all. After gaining confidence from defeating the first orc, he realized that the other's attack was threatening but not fast at all. As long as he stays calm, he can avoid the orc's attack. Ku! The club wielded by the orc made a strong sound as it swung in the air. Jinhyuk stepped forward at the perfect time as he aimed at the orc's side. Take this! The orc tried to move his club in a hurry, but he was too late to stop Jinhyuk's attack. The heavy club made it impossible for him to be agile enough to defend himself. Jinhyuk's baseball bat dug into the orc's flesh and completely broke his ribs. Gek! The orc collapsed as it made a pig-like sound. While the orc was distracted by the crushing pain, Jinhyuk swung his bat toward his temple. The orc was beaten to death and could no longer scream. He died on the spot with his head crushed. Jinhyuk once again checked the level up notification that appeared in front of him and realized that the battle was over. I caught 2 orcs. Even though he can see the 2 orcs fallen on the parking lot floor, it felt unbelievable for Jinhyuk. Just yesterday, Jinhyuk was only a D rank hunter who could only hunt goblins. Since at least 4 B rank hunters were usually needed to handle this matter, but he accomplished it alone, it was natural for him to doubt the situation. Junkyal clapped as he approached Jinhyuk. In return for saving my life, I'll buy all the goblin corpses for 6 million won. Are you serious? Yes. I have no intention of lying to my savior. Jo Hyungil heard what Junkyal said and he thought that maybe the sun won't shine on them tomorrow. If he buys the corpses for 6 million won, the profits that the organization could gain were close to zero. It was the first time that Lee Junkyal, who only ever thinks of profit, voluntarily made such a proposal. What is he planning? As Jo Hyungil expected, Lee Junkyal offered Kang Jin-hyeok a proposal. In exchange, please sell those orc corpses to us as well. Lee Junkyal reached out his hand to Jinhyuk. I look forward to doing more business with you. Since the deal was set, Kang Jin-hyuk's life flipped 180 degrees. He was worrying about rent just yesterday. Now, almost 200 million won has been accumulated in his bank account. It's 6 million per goblin, so that's 90 million in total. That, plus the orc bodies. Jinhyuk confirmed the amount on his account and he clenched his fist in joy and enjoyed the sense of accomplishment. All those large guilds have monopolized this much money, huh? The more he thought about them, the more disgusting and terrible they seemed. He knew that money would mean a comfortable life, but even so, it didn't make sense for those guilds to be so greedy. How much more did they want to earn that they don't yield even to the small monsters? When he checked an article posted on the internet, he confirmed the harm that these guilds do. The comment section of the article, which announced the performance of a large guild, was filled with complaints and anger from lower rank hunters who were deprived of their right to hunt. We'll see. His level exceeded 30 after hunting those orcs. Jinhyuk decided to enter the labyrinth again after he bought good equipment with his capital. The dwarf Ajusi's items looked good, but the dwarf's equipment was of the best quality, but he can't just buy them with his money. The currency here won't work for the dwarf, so he had to prepare another way to get equipment from him. Should I just bring a lot of aluminum cans? Since the dwarf regarded the aluminum Oriharukan as a valuable item, it could be a good thing to trade with. What the? When did you get here? I just got here. What's that on your hand? Why did you pack so much? As Jinhyuk expected, the dwarf showed interest in the paper bag that he brought. Do you want to drink one? Jinhyuk took out a can of beer and handed it over to the dwarf. Upon receiving it, the dwarf's eyes widened. This one is Oriharukan too. There's also alcohol inside it. They pack alcohol in Oriharukan. What's this? A holy grail. In the outside world, it was a common aluminum can. But where the dwarf lived, it was a luxury that neither a pope nor an emperor got their hands on. The dwarf believed that Jinhyuk was not an ordinary person. He brought not just one, but a lot of these things. He was sure that the guy was a warrior. Try drinking it. When Jinhyuk opened the can and handed it back to him, the dwarf took a sip. And he immediately splashed it back on the floor and spat out the liquid. What the did someone pee in this? Pee. Yeah, it's my first time tasting such disgusting liquid. Is this? It's beer. Beer. This is alcohol. Yes. Do humans call this thing an alcoholic drink? The dwarf had an expression of disbelief. Humans call such a bland and tasteless drink as alcohol. How poor of them. Don't tell the one on the green bottle is the same liquid as this one. It's a bit different. This one is called soju. Give it to me. I want to know what kind of things you guys drink. The dwarf snatched away the soju bottle and opened the lid. He took in the scent of the liquid. What the foo? There's not even a fruity scent, it just smells like straight up alcohol. He could taste it just by smelling the liquid, but he won't really know unless he drinks it himself. The dwarf took a sip with some hope. Unlike with the beer, the dwarf drank a few more sips and sighed in appreciation. It tastes like trash, but it'll taste better if I add something. Add something. Like what? Stay still. There's something that comes to mind. The dwarf was lost in thought for a moment. He brought a large wooden barrel and poured all the soju that Jinhyuk brought. And then, He said something to Jinhyuk. Hey you, go and get me some mithril. The dwarf poured the remaining soju in the barrel as he spoke to Jinhyuk. What, some mithril? Yeah, in order to salvage this crappy drink, I need to borrow power from some mithril. The mithril was a mysterious metal, which held mana on its own. The dwarf believed that by combining the mithril's mana with his skill, he would be able to greatly enhance the taste of this liquor. Hey, if you do well, you might even get something you've never imagined. The dwarf picked up the granule that he had hung on the wall while talking and he handed it over to Jinhyuk. While you're at it, I'll craft some equipment for you so you won't have to complain. Well, alright, if you'll do that for me, then. Kang Jin-hyeok readily accepted the dwarf's request because he was about to ask him for equipment anyway. When Jinhyuk asked if he could receive the new equipment right away, the dwarf let out a big snort. Why would I give you one from my collection? The things that I sell and the things that I collect are completely different, kid. It was foolish for him to even ask why the dwarf collects swords and spears. Whatever hobby someone is interested in is up to them, and no one can say otherwise. Just in time, he discovered a staircase. So this is the stairs leading down. It was great luck that he found the stairs faster than expected in this intricate labyrinth. Kang Jin-hyeok went down the stairs with a nervous face, thinking that a stronger monster might appear. While heading downwards, his eyes became round as he saw the drastically changed environment. The further he reached downstairs, the brown-colored walls of the labyrinth had changed. What is now in front of Jinhyuk was a green maze, where the cries of grass bugs were heard as if imitating a forest environment. The labyrinth is decorated in a unique way. Perhaps it was just his mind playing tricks on him, but the air in here felt clearer than from the upper floor. Right when Jinhyuk stepped on the ground, an unfamiliar notification appeared to him. Current location. Floor 2 feet the labyrinth of dogs and skulls. Do you wish to save this place as a warp point? Warp point. It was his first time hearing of it. He's not sure what it meant, but he had to choose between yes and no. Whatever. After a brief thought, Jinhyuk chose yes. Floor 2 saved as a warp point. After the message appeared, a gate that looked like a purple vortex appeared in front of him. From here on, you can go back and forth between floor 1 and floor 2 through this gate. Thanks to the kind explanation of the notification, Jinhyuk was able to understand the purpose of the gate. It feels like I'm playing a game. Catching monsters and leveling in the dungeon made him feel like he's in a game. But the life of a human was far from being a game. If he's caught off guard here, it'll be over for him because humans have no ability to respawn. Jinhyuk took out his radar to see if there were monsters around him. The radar showed several spots waiting right in front of him. This floor's packed. The title said it was a maze of dog skulls, but a real dog came out here. Kobolds were more agile and powerful than goblins, but they belonged to the same tier of messy monsters. Kang Jin-hyeok burst into laughter as he watched the kobold approach him. On the other hand, the kobolds looked confused at Jinhyuk's reaction. They clearly outnumbered him, but the human who came here all alone had the audacity to giggle and laugh. That hurt the kobold's pride, so it snarled forward. Kyung. The kobold barked in a loud voice and immediately rushed toward Jinhyuk. However, before he could even take out his sword, the kobold was hit on the face by the bat wielded by Kang Jin-hyeok. Catching the goblins and the orcs made Jinhyuk level up significantly, so the kobolds were no match for him. Kyung. The kobold was sent all the way back like a ball, with its snout completely crushed. Just like that, the kobold collapsed on the floor and could no longer move. While the other kobolds were in disbelief of the situation, Jinhyuk approached with relaxed steps. You're getting hit like normal dogs today, you punks. His confidence was soaring among the clouds after he caught those two orcs by himself. These puppies were no big deal compared to the presence of the orcs, which could instill fear just by looking at them. Level 50 reached. You may now choose your specialty. Your specialty will be automatically determined by reviewing your recent activity. The time he had waited for finally came. Since he swung his bat tirelessly for 2 days, he expected his specialty to be warrior. However, the results were not what he expected. You, who have conquered the undead, are now a cleric. After the black stone wall, Jinhyuk quickly arrived at the gate that led to the first floor. He reached the dwarf's blacksmith house in no time. When the dwarf, who was sitting around and resting, saw Jinhyuk's face. He stood up immediately. Seems like you're not tired at all. Is that something you say to people who clearly look exhausted? Don't you know what a joke is, kid? The dwarf chuckled loudly as he stuck out his hand towards Jinhyuk. Give it to me. I made you something amazing since you brought this for me. Jinhyuk's hand stopped for a while after handing over the mithril that he had mined. He gave only 2/3 of the mithril to the dwarf. Here you go. This is all that's left back there. I dug around for a bit, but I didn't find anything more. TCH, so supplies are running out in that labyrinth as well. The dwarf didn't suspect at all and just took the mithril. Before melting the mithril in the furnace, the dwarf asked Jinhyuk a question. All right, then, I should go ahead and make some equipment. Well, is there any specific skill you want to put? That's easy enough. He arrived just after the dwarf finished his work. The dwarf discovered Jinhyuk's presence and waved his hand. Where've you been and what did you do? Well, I had to attend to some business. He couldn't tell the truth because he knew that the dwarf would say more things if he knew that Jinhyuk had fallen asleep. Kang Jin-hyeok, who was trying to avoid the dwarf's gaze, saw an object on top of the table. It was an armor, connected with a dense chain, which had a subtle blue shine similar to the mithril he mined. Perhaps, is this? That's right, it's an armor just for you. I at least made it comfortable to wear inside. When Jinhyuk picked up the chain armor, a notification immediately appeared in front of him. Unique item acquired. A unique item. One rank greater than a rare one. Kang Jin-hyeok barely contained his excitement. Mithril chain armor. Rank. Unique. Explanation. Chain armor created by a dwarf with all his might. It is light and durable. Distinct effect. Decrease physical damage by 50%. Decrease magic damage by 50%. After checking the item's information, Jinhyuk was able to understand why the item was ranked unique. The highest damage decrease rate for rare items was 20%. The armor that the dwarf made can decrease it by 50%. It also has the effect of decreasing both physical and magic damage. His suspicions of the mithril, which he thought was just a common metal like the Oriharukan, completely disappeared. Wow, the custom-made chain armor fit perfectly for him. On top of that, it wasn't very heavy. He could easily wear normal clothes on the outside to hide the armor. Kang Jin-hyeok wondered where else he could get such a great item this easily. Thank you so much, Ajusi. Forget it, just take this with you. The dwarf took out a large barrel with several strange devices attached to it. What is this? Can't you tell? It's a drinking bottle. The monster hunting of the Titans, one of the top 5 largest guilds in Korea, ended smoothly. The hunt was conducted for the new recruits to gain experience, so only 3 out of the 15 hunters present were veterans. One of them was deputy guild leader On Do-yoon. The hunt went smoothly thanks to the rigorous interview and screening process of the guild. The suppression is completed. After checking that the last monster was dead and the new recruit completed his report, On Do-yoon packed up his equipment. Alright, let's withdraw. Please wait a second. A guild member sensed something unexpected, so he shouted in an urgent voice and pointed to the thing with his finger. The other guys turned their attention to where he was pointing, and they saw a large purple vortex. What the FK? They never thought a swarm of monsters would get to their location. Was it because the guild hunted large quantities of lizard men here? As if waiting for this day to come, the lizard men appeared in front of the hunters, with more systematic formation than ever. They don't come when we want them to. But of all moments, right now is. The other guild members were off to hunt other large monsters. The only people who could stop this monster now were the people who are currently there. The new recruits were terrified as they witnessed the monsters multiply thrice in number. What should we do? We should hurry and request backup from the other hunters. This would have been a good opportunity to make money, but not right now. There were only 3 veteran hunters present, and most of the new recruits never fought monsters more than 3 times. The hunters are incredibly outnumbered. However, On Do-yoon doesn't intend to tend to the new recruits' requests for help. What if the murderer manages to slip in when we call for our people in such a hurry? Now is not the time for you to think about that kind of situation. The serial killer who only targets hunters from large guilds. His existence was certainly unsettling, but it doesn't make sense to not call for backup just because they're worried about the killer. At this rate, they'd die at the hands of the monsters first instead of the serial killers. Don't fall back, everyone. Fight. We can defeat them as long as we keep it together. They have to protect the guild's power of preventing other hunters from coming into the area. If they chicken out right now, Titan's reputation will be damaged. The guild members know that they're disadvantaged, but they risk expulsion if they disobeyed the guild's orders. They had no choice but to cry out and hold their weapons. Kang Jin-hyeok SSI. Yes. The clerk presented the certificate, which confirms him to be a cleric and AC rank hunter, to Jinhyuk. When Jinhyuk received it, the clerk smiled and congratulated him. Congratulations on ranking up. Thank you. He thought he would take more years to receive AC rank hunter certificate, but it finally came into his hands. Jinhyuk doubted whether this was a dream. It's funny thinking about him being AC rank hunter, but he couldn't help it because a hunter's life is truly difficult. Let's go all the way to B rank with this momentum. If other people heard what he said, he'd surely be laughed at and told to keep dreaming. But because Jinhyuk has faith, he's able to be confident in himself. He thought of going home right away and entering the dungeon. Now that he doesn't have to worry that much about money, he wants to focus on leveling up. However, Jinhyuk stopped in his tracks when he saw a certain hunter as he was about to leave the building. The hunter who appeared out of nowhere leaned on the wall near the entrance and roughly snickered. Seeing his clothes torn and his body scarred, he seemed to have fought a fierce battle just now. Gasp, gasp. Perhaps, is there a cleric here who can lend a hand? The hunter shouted in an earnest voice even though he couldn't breathe properly. Kang Jin-hyeok raised his hand with pity because the situation seemed so urgent. I'm a cleric, but I'm a C rank hunter, is that okay? Of course. Please come with me right away. Since clerics were very valuable, people don't care even if their rank was low. Just like this hunter. He grabbed Jinhyuk's hand and immediately gave him a returning stone. Whoa. The place where they suddenly arrived was outside the deserted city. There were numerous lizardmen and hunters struggling against them. Jinhyuk frowned as he witnessed the bloody battle. The situation was worse than expected. He knew that the hunters were Titan's guild members just by looking at their clothes and the pattern engraved in them. Out of all people, looking at the way they fight, he almost mistook them for a young name guild. From a tanker that couldn't even properly drag an aggro, to a dealer who's confused where to attack first. On Duyun was desperately directing the other hunters, but everyone looked so inexperienced and were moving like a proper mess. Jinhyuk could roughly predict the situation after seeing such a scene. They must have stepped on a landmine while teaching new recruits. Jinhyuk held back his laughter because he thought that the scene looked satisfying. The hunter who brought him spoke urgently without noticing Jinhyuk holding his laughter. Just heal some of them back. We'll take care of the battle. I'll give you a reward after this, so don't worry. After pouring out those words as if he was rapping, the hunter jumped back into the battlefield. Jinhyuk didn't like the hunter, but he followed him silently as he said he would give him money. He should hate the person, not the money. As he walked towards the back of the scene, he could see some other clerics just like him. Among them, he met eyes with someone and they greeted each other awkwardly. Hello. Looks like they were also dragged here. After bowing his head slightly, he joined them and used his heal without a break. However, the hunters were completely outnumbered by the lizardmen. Even after using heal continuously, the hunter's physical strength decreased faster. This is like pouring water into a broken jar. I think so too. The clerics turned anxious after some time. The situation wasn't getting any better even though as many as 5 clerics were assisting the battle by restoring the hunter's physical strength. Jinhyuk sighed at the situation. Can't they just put aside their pride and ask for backup from another guild? Ha ha ha. The other clerics agreed with Jinhyuk, but they couldn't protest. At this rate, they'll be wiped out in no time. Furthermore, Duyun didn't even notice that the lizard men were planning a backup to aim for the rear when they saw him rush without assessing the situation. Like a chameleon, some lizardmen who were hidden with an invincibility effect were quietly approaching the clerics. It was only Jinhyuk's baseball bat that noticed the threat. Jinhyuk sensed danger while he was using his heal towards the front. He looked around inside his inventory and found his baseball bat trying to crawl out on its own. Through his experience, he knows that this thing doesn't happen for no reason. What could be nearby? Jinhyuk hurriedly took the bat to his hand and looked around in all directions. Because of the bat's high instinct effect, Jinhyuk was able to vaguely feel the enemy's position. He swung the bat immediately when he saw a part of his vision swaying like a haze. Screech! The lizard man disguised in a protective color screamed with his distorted face. His disguise was revealed and he returned to his original state. Gasp! The monsters reached up to here. The clerics exclaimed as soon as they found the group of monsters right next to them, while Jinhyuk was contemplating something. The Titan's hunters were busy chasing behind On Do-yoon in the fronts. They seemed to have no idea that monsters sneaked behind the clerics. Jinhyuk shouted at the distressed clerics and told them not to worry. I'll take care of these, so you guys just keep focusing on healing. The clerics were shocked at Jinhyuk's words. You're taking them on alone. It's dangerous. Looking at the monsters, there were roughly 20 of them. It was like a suicide mission, taking on that many monsters that even the guild hunters couldn't stop. We'd rather help you. Anything's possible if we all fight together. The clerics thought that if they stuck together and heal each other, they could prevent an unexpected attack. But that method could never work. Then all the hunters in front will die. If your heal for the hunters up front is delayed even a little, blood will be shed everywhere. Even so, I'm confident, so don't worry about me and just focus on the work you've been doing so far. Jinhyuk spoke confidently as he hoisted his bat and ran in the direction of the lizard men. The half-confident clerics witnessed Jinhyuk breaking the lizard men's head with a single swing. How can a cleric have such hunting skill? Now, let's focus on healing just as he said. Yay! When the clerics began healing the hunters again, the lizard men somehow tried to stop them. However, as long as Jinhyuk blocked the path, there's no way that these lizard men could move forward. Where do you think you're going? A lizard man who crossed the line immediately had his head crushed like clay from the impact from the baseball bat. Is he really a cleric? The reason that the clerics were surprised was because Jinhyuk was displaying skill of a B-rank hunter. In particular, beating monsters with nothing but a baseball bat gave the impression that he was a hunter with high-level skills. But the clerics weren't the only ones interested in Jinhyuk's display of performance. S-rank hunter Seo Sang-ho, who rushed after he saw the monsters, witnessed Jinhyuk's skill as well. On Do-yoon is alive thanks to that cleric. If Jinhyuk didn't block the monsters who were aiming for the clerics at the back, they all would have been dead. Shall I get to work now? Seo Sang-ho warmed up with a light stretch. He then jumped at once and landed right at the center of the lizard men. In just 3 seconds, Sang-ho flew over 200 meters and landed perfectly. Boom! As soon as he landed, a roar resonated and the surroundings shook as if an earthquake had just occurred. The Titan's hunters cheered when they saw Sang-ho appear splendidly. It's the guild leader. While everyone was happy to see him arrive, Do-yoon looked depressed alone. He spoke to his colleagues in an annoyed tone. Called in the guild leader. We called him as soon as the situation started. We thought there's no problem with calling help from our own guild. Stop saying useless things. He could have handled the situation without help from that guy. On Do-yoon wanted to say that. But he knew, with what just unfolded earlier, that no one would believe that. The person who was in charge of commanding the others couldn't stand it and just rushed into the enemy camp without thinking, so who would dare believe in him now? Unlike On Do-yoon, Seo Sang-ho didn't lose his mind and run wild. Seo Sang-ho first took care of those who were tired and exhausted, even though they persist that they can still fight. I'll create a path for you, so those whose stamina is left at 50%, hurry and fall back. Jinhyuk watched the scene unfold with his mouth wide open. I think that's S-rank hunter Seo Sang-ho. Seo Sang-ho, you mean the Titans guild leader? Yay, looks like we can head back now. So that's what an S-rank hunter looks like. Jinhyuk was impressed by how he managed to flip the situation alone. Compared to his current skills, he realized he still has a long way to go. He dreams of being that strong one day. Seo Sang-ho handled the situation in 15 minutes. On Do-yoon, that crazy. Seo Sang-ho realized that it was a mistake to assign On Do-yoon as a deputy guild leader. He approached the depressed On Do-yoon and grabbed him by his collar. Why did you try to solve this alone without calling for help? Did you want to die with all these men? If we asked for help in this kind of situation, then the guild's reputation would be It's not because you worry about the guild's reputation but because you wanted to save your own face. Seo Sang-ho was dissatisfied with On Do-yoon's attitude. Until now, the executives defended Do-yoon and let him take on the role of a deputy guild leader because it was a great benefit for the guild, but now he couldn't stand it anymore. Sang-ho never imagined that Do-yoon would put the new recruit's lives in danger in his pursuit of his dignity. It would have been acceptable if On Do-yoon commanded calmly until the end, but he gave up on that. Seo Sang-ho realized it was useless to say anything more to this man. He frowned as he let go of On Do-yoon. I have no intention of letting this pass, so go and wait for your suspension. Ah, but what have I done so wrong? It was just bad luck that we ended up in this situation. This really, he almost used his fist right away, but Sang-ho barely endured it because of the several eyes watching them. Beating up a deputy guild leader in front of many people would only damage the guild. As the person in charge of a large guild, he had to prioritize solving the situation instead of giving in to his emotions. Seo Sang-ho took a deep breath to calm his anger. One of the Titan's hunters, who noticed the atmosphere getting more and more tense, opened his mouth to change the subject. Guild leader, let's first reward the clerics who kindly assisted us today. Alright, I almost forgot. Seo Sang-ho remembered Kang Jin-hyeok who he saw fighting against the lizard men earlier. He walked towards the clerics and personally thanked them. Thank you for your help today. If it weren't for you all, it would have been a great disaster. Jinhyuk couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the Titan Guild leader bow 90 degrees to express his gratitude. Until now, he thought that all people from large guilds were arrogant, but he seems to have changed his mind. Another shocking thing happened. Seo Sang-ho approached Kang Jin-hyeok and reached out his hand, asking for a handshake. I saw you deal with the lizard men alone. It was an amazing display of skill. Ah, right. Jinhyuk shook Seo Sang-ho's hand with a nervous face. If you don't mind, may I know your name? My name is Kang Jin-hyeok. Perhaps, are you already part of a guild? No, I don't. Then what do you think about joining ours? Of course, I will exempt you from all the admission fees. Jinhyuk looked puzzled at the sudden offer. An S-rank hunter personally recruiting him. It was unbelievable. You're recruiting this guy to our guild. On Do-yoon opened his mouth before Kang Jin-hyeok was able to say anything. He remembered Jinhyuk's face. He was the one who protested to him just a few days ago, talking about why large guilds monopolized monsters. It was unacceptable to let the low-ranked hunter, who had only been whining about not having much skill, join the prestigious Titans. And most of all, it hurt Do-yoon's pride that he was helped by such a hunter. What's so wrong with this person? Seo Sang-ho's patience was being tested. Patience, no, I can't stand this anymore. In the end, Seo Sang-ho spoke while veins on. His neck appeared from his anger. He's the one who cleaned up the mess you left behind, The hunters at the scene were all surprised to see the guild leader shouting at the deputy guild leader. Jinhyuk enjoyed the situation. A hunter who held pride in himself was being scolded like a kid by his superior. It was a scene to enjoy with some popcorn. He wondered how he could heat up the atmosphere more. After much consideration, Jinhyuk opened his mouth with a sinister smile. Thank you very much for your offer, but I do not wish to be in a guild with a person such as him. On Do-yoon's eyes opened wide after hearing those words. He was already angry that he was being embarrassed by the guild leader in front of so many people. He exploded after hearing such words from a hunter he hasn't even heard of before. You better know who you're going against, Kerr. On Do-yoon took a swing and tried to slap Jinhyuk's cheek. Seo Sang-ho saw what Do-yoon wanted to do and moved to stop him, but there was an object much faster than him. Instead of Kang Jin-hyeok, it was On Do-yoon who fell with a resounding thud. Oh, hey, Kang Jin-hyuk's bat swung by itself as soon as it detected the threat. Usually, On Do-yoon would have been able to avoid such an attack. Due to the long battle, On Do-yoon's stamina and MP were bottomed out. On top of that, he was hit by an S-durability enchanted baseball bat. An A-rank hunter fainted after being hit by a person like me. This makes some headlines. Surely enough, people around them took out their phones and took pictures of On Do-yoon. Perhaps the story would pick up and become such a hot topic in a few minutes. Jinhyuk smiled as he returned the red bat to his inventory. The Titans were in disbelief that On Do-yoon was hit by a C-rank cleric hunter. The executives argued that they should let go of the man who humiliated the guild, but Seo Sang-ho refused that proposition. The guild was defamed by Ahn Do-yoon, not him. Ahn Do-yoon knowingly put new recruits in danger's way, and still tried to use violence against the person who saved their asses. Seo Sang-ho wanted to punish Ahn Do-yoon for that crime, and demote him to a regular guild member. Such crime usually results in expulsion, but he wants to give him some consideration given his loyalty to the guild. After kicking out all the executives from the conference room, Seo Sang-ho sighed and leaned back on his chair. It's disappointing the more I think about it. Seo Sang-ho was very disappointed that Kang Jin-hyeok couldn't join the guild. It's amusing that a C-rank hunter was able to do such damage to an A-rank one. It was obvious that he could become a much better hunter than Ahn Do-yoon if he took some time. Jinhyuk has the potential to become an S-rank hunter like himself. It was a deep regret that he failed to recruit such talent. I really want to turn him into a big person. Fortunately, he was able to obtain Kang Jin-hyuk's contact information. It's enough to keep constant contact, so there's a good chance that there would be another opportunity in the future. Shall I just invite him to be my drinking buddy? Although there's no question about Jinhyuk's abilities, Seo Sang-ho also liked Kang Jin-hyuk's cool attitude. He was someone who refused additional rewards even though everyone recognized his contribution. Regardless of whether Jinhyuk would join the guild or not, Sang-ho wanted to become friends with him. Should I have just accepted their offer? Jinhyuk felt some regret when he checked his account balance. His expenses have increased more than expected because he purchased some potions and other scrolls and equipment. He refused the Titan's reward because he thought he could just earn money through the dungeon anyway. Thinking about it now, he realized that he didn't have to refuse their reward. I shouldn't have refused their money just to look cool. It's true that he's got a good image now as a cleric, but it was foolish to give up benefits that were available to him right away. I'm not leaving the dungeon until I make up for the loss today. Kang Jin-hyuk wondered what kind of monsters lived in this place. As if it heard his curiosity, a golem suddenly appeared from the ground. What is this out of nowhere? Right after it spawned from the ground, the golem tried to hit Jinhyuk with its fist of stone. Jinhyuk managed to step back and dodge, but that was a close call. Jinhyuk's confidence faltered at the sight of the golem's fist. As Jinhyuk tried to hurriedly get up, someone shouted at him. Stay seated right there. Shortly after the voice was heard, an arrow passed over Jinhyuk's head and penetrated the center of the golem's chest. The golem whose chest was penetrated became an ordinary stone and collapsed in an instant. At that moment, Jinhyuk realized that the golem's core was in its chest. There's no more reason to be scared now that he knows the golem's vital point. Kang Jin-hyuk immediately got up and threw his bat to a different golem that was rushing towards him. The baseball bat flew at a high speed and hit the golem's chest accurately. The golem soon collapsed too. After catching the baseball bat thanks to the recovery function, Jinhyuk sighed in relief. Woo! I almost got in huge trouble. Jinhyuk took a deep breath and looked in the direction from which the arrow flew. He discovered a person with a brown hood covering his whole body, and a bow that was covering her face. The person's gender couldn't be deciphered from their looks, but the voice definitely belonged to a woman's. Kang Jin-hyuk thought that she was also a person living in the dungeon, just like the dwarf. Her clothes doesn't look like she belongs to the outside world. Thank you for helping me. Jinhyuk approached her to give his thanks, but the other quickly grabbed his face. It happened suddenly that Jinhyuk didn't have time to think about why he was suddenly grabbed in the face. The hooded person pulled Jinhyuk's face and asked him, Where did you come from? I asked where you came from. Are you trapped in here too? Or did you come here from the outside? That was an unexpected question. Jinhyuk answered with no hesitation. I came from the outside. As soon as the other heard his answer, her behavior became more intense. She grabbed Jinhyuk's collar with both hands and shook Jinhyuk's body back and forth. You came from the outside. When? Today. Where? How? I saw the entrance so I just went in. Jinhyuk was about to get motion sickness because the person was shaking him too much. As he was about to tell her to stop shaking him, her hands fell off. She let go of him so suddenly that Jinhyuk didn't have time to recover. Jinhyuk lost his balance and fell on the floor. Egu, are you doing? The hooded person did not pay attention to Jinhyuk's protest. She was muttering something, as if she was in deep thought. Is she mentally ill? Jinhyuk slipped back with the intention of running away. When he moved about 10 centimeters, an arrow quickly passed over his head. Where are you going? Jinhyuk only managed to open his mouth from shock. He didn't see any motion of pulling out an arrow and shooting with a bow, yet an arrow suddenly flew above his head. He realized that he doesn't dare to fight this person. Take me to the entrance from where you came in. Jinhyuk nodded with a pale face. He might end up with a lot of holes in his body if he rejected. Good answer. The other person put her bow back, satisfied. Jinhyuk, who saw the appearance of what obviously looked like an eld, shut his mouth in surprise. It seems like the rumors are true that elves are all beautiful men and women. The lady in front of Kang Jin-hyeok was the most beautiful woman he's seen in his whole life. Feeling Jinhyuk's intense stares, the woman glared back at him. What are you looking at? Realizing that his actions were rude, Jinhyuk hurriedly diverted his gaze. He awkwardly asked her a question. Are you perhaps an elf? It was a question from the top of his head. He knows that a dwarf lives inside the dungeon, so it wouldn't be an odd thing for an elf to live here too. Her response to Jinhyuk's question was neither positive nor negative. You're partly correct, I'm a half. Only her appearance resembles an elf's. She added that her eating habits and lifestyle were no different from humans. Have you heard of Lucia the half-elf? No, I haven't. Really? I thought I was famous, but I guess I'm not that good yet. Lucia scratched her cheek with an awkward face. She spoke with pride, yet shame rebounded upon Jinhyuk's answer. Anyway, that's my name. I'm a platinum rank adventurer. She showed a platinum medal with colorful decorations as she introduced herself. Jinhyuk didn't know what that meant. Kang Jin-hyeok pretended to admire the object made of precious platinum, which he assumes to be a rare material in this world as well. Wow, that's amazing. If you're going to pretend, then do it a bit more convincingly. Lucia sighed as she put back the medal. Seeing that you don't know my name and even what this medal means, tells me that you're really not from around here. Anyway, it doesn't matter that we don't speak the same language. It's all about using magic. Magic also doesn't exist from where I came from. There are also no elves like you. To be fair, she was a half-elf, but now was not the time to point out such a trivial thing. Lucia doubted what Jinhyuk said. There are no elves. Then how did you know that I was one? It's because I read about elves in books. Elves appear in literature but not in real life. Is your world apocalyptic? I don't know. Jinhyuk doesn't know how to explain it. How could someone from Earth accurately describe a race that existed in a different world? He wants to ask those fantasy novel writers personally. Anyway, you're saying that there's a dimension connected to this dungeon, right? I guess so. Although Jinhyuk isn't very sure, he knew that the dungeon was not an isolated place. Because it was connected to his own attic. After hearing Jinhyuk's answer, Lucia looked relieved. That's a relief. The crazy wizard's spell worked for now. What do you mean? What do you think? You're able to reach this dungeon because of that crazy wizard. Jinhyuk looked surprised. Why in the world would he do that? Do you know Naindul? The wizard's thoughts couldn't be understood by a sober person. The drunker he got, the crazier he turned. If he makes a successful potion, it could be possible to turn it back. But it looks like he made a way out now. Lucia talked to herself while Jinhyuk was left confused. Perhaps the woman's goal was to return to where she came from. Say, is it possible for you to go back right now? I'll need more information first. It's the very reason I'm stuck here anyway. What's that? There's a hidden place that's blocked from the outside. A hidden place? Yeah, it's a place that I recently discovered. Lucia stared right at Jinhyuk. Jinhyuk unknowingly took a step backward, perhaps because the elf's gaze was burdensome. I think you'll be quite useful. Help me. Help you. With what? To catch the boss monster. Boss monster. Jinhyuk drooled at the thought of a boss monster. Boss monsters were more than twice as strong as other monsters. They were difficult to hunt, but hunters searched for them regardless because they can earn great rewards from catching them. Lucia noticed Jinhyuk's reaction and she knew that he had taken the bait properly. I can handle him alone, but since there's a lot of small monsters surrounding the area, it's a bit annoying. So you want me to handle the small ones? Lucia smiled, satisfied that Jinhyuk understood it quickly. I'll give you a reward, so help me investigate it. How's that? Of course, there's no reason to refuse that offer. He knew firsthand just how good Lucia's skills were. And besides, he might discover more about her purpose if he comes along with her. All right, I'll help you. Inside the spacious and secluded room, a single stone statue was seen in the middle. As if sensing the footsteps of Jinhyuk and Lucia, the stone statue began to move with a sound similar to crying. Guru. The stone statue was wearing an armor and equipped with swords and shields. Its appearance was several times more sophisticated than any other golem he had ever seen. Although, the statue looked quite ancient, as if it was mere decoration rather than a thing that can fight. Lucia pulled her bow before the statue rushed at them. I'll only show you once so you watch closely. Jinhyuk witnessed Lucia's arrow tip suddenly shine in a bright, blue glow. The light became stronger and stronger as if it was gathering strength. The moment Lucia let go of the bowstring, a booming sound resonated. Boom! The arrow hit the statue with a sound that was similar to a bomb exploding. The left arm of the statue which held its armor blew up. The stone statue stared blankly at its body, perhaps in disbelief of what just happened. Gi-gyu. The same was true for Jinhyuk, who had no idea what he just witnessed. He was shocked to see a part of the stone statue easily crushed like that, as if it was made of clay. Only then did Jinhyuk realize that Lucia had been saving her strength. However, Jinhyuk wanted to ask her something first. How did you do that just now? Well, what do you think? I put my aura in the arrow. Aura. Can you use it for things other than arrows? Of course. Jinhyuk's eyes sparkled when he heard her answer. That power made it possible for a small arrow to deal great damage to a huge stone statue. If he could use that for his, he'd never run out of power like he did earlier with the middle boss. Lucia noticed that Jinhyuk was interested in this aura thing. What do you think? Wanna learn it? Jinhyuk didn't have to think about it. He nodded his head up and down right away. There's no way he wouldn't want to learn a skill that gave a missile-level firepower to an ordinary arrow. Guru. While Lucia was deep in her thoughts, the boss monster moved for an ambush. It was a surprise attack aimed at her, but Jinhyuk was faster than it. Holy shield. Because of the natural instinct of his bat, Jinhyuk was able to get there faster than the monster. Thanks to the level up given by beating the middle boss, Jinhyuk's defense skill completely blocked the stone statue's attack. The rebound made the stone statue collapse on the spot. Jinhyuk saw the opportunity, so he rushed in as fast as he could towards the statue's exposed core. A sound of breaking was heard, but it seems like the core was not completely crushed. But Jinhyuk expected this, so he swung his bat again with no hesitation. Jinhyuk hit the stone statue's core once, twice, 3 times with no rest. The core couldn't withstand the damage and was shattered in the end. Geu. Leaving a scream-like moan as its last breath, the stone statue stopped moving eventually. You have leveled up. Thanks to the tremendous express given by the boss monster, Jinhyuk was bombarded with level-up messages. It's not been that long since he became a C rank hunter, but his level is now up to 85 already. If this continues, he'd be a B rank hunter in no time. Jinhyuk searched through the remains of the boss monster, expecting to find some fallen items. Unfortunately, there were none. That skill just now. Are you a cleric? Jinhyuk was taken aback by Lucia's sudden question. You didn't know. I thought you were a warrior because you carry a bat. Who knew that a human beating up golems was a cleric? Lucia was right. It's the first time that Jinhyuk used a cleric's skill in front of Lucia. You're a cleric. This is unexpected. Is it really? Well, it's not that surprising, but it's different from what I thought. Jinhyuk didn't understand what Lucia was trying to say. What's different? Is there a disadvantage to being a cleric? It's the opposite. What? Given that you're a cleric, it's going to be easier to teach you how to use aura. Jinhyuk was confused. How does this specialty, which does not have combat specialized skills, help him in learning aura? Lucia saw Jinhyuk's expression and knew that the guy knew nothing. Have you ever heard of holy aura? Of course not. Not knowing it is not something to brag about. Lucia sighed quietly before continuing her explanation. The shield you just used. That's also kind of an aura. You're saying that skill uses aura. Well, it's a bit different. But the method and the effect are the same. The difference is that aura is made from mana gathered from the body. The thing that clerics use was made of divine power. So will I be able to use it right away? Of course not, but if you do well, maybe you'll learn it in a week or so. For clerics, they don't have to stack up on aura, they just have to learn how to use it. Of course, it wouldn't be easy, but Lucia was confident that she'd be able to teach it with her own capabilities. But still, just because it's possible, doesn't mean that she'll do it for him right away. Someone told her that before. Don't do what you're good at for free. Lucia's experience as an adventurer proved that to be true. In exchange for me teaching you, I have one condition. You remember what it is, right? Condition. Ah. Jinhyuk remembered what Lucia said. No way. Lucia was willing to teach him such a precious skill in exchange for a chocolate bar. She really ate all those by herself. Lucia lumped the sugary treat in her mouth as soon as she could. The numerous desserts he brought from the outside world all disappeared in an instant like a magic trick. What you lunkin' at? Don't talk while you're eating. She seemed like a ghost that craved for sugar. Lucia was busily moving her hands and mouth. Seeing her eat with her whole heart and soul makes it more believable that she offered to teach him aura in exchange for all the food. I've never seen someone eat this much. Lucia's eyes grow wide open with each chocolate bar that Jinhyuk gave her. People generally like sweets, so it's not like that's an odd thing. What was strange was the amount of sugar she was consuming. Lucia exhaled loudly after her lengthy meal. She consumed at least a few kilograms of food, but her belly didn't stick out at all. The mysterious sight made Jinhyuk realize the greatness of the elven genes. Why did you have to eat those here in the basement? We already caught the boss monster. Jinhyuk didn't understand why she chose to eat in such a dark and unpleasant place. Lucia pointed her finger toward the wall in response. Do you see those sentences written on the wall? I do. What about them? Those are magic spells. You can't tell. Jinhyuk nodded his head. The magic spells he was familiar with were usually in the form of a star drawn inside a circle. It never crossed his mind that the scribbles written on the wall were magic spells. Then you should know that that's what made connected this dungeon to your world. Speaking of which, let me tell you the basics of using aura. Right now, weren't you going to investigate those written magic spells first? Teaching you the basics shouldn't be that difficult. Lucia approached Jinhyuk and reached out her right hand. Jinhyuk didn't know whether she was asking for a handshake or something else, so he just stared at her hand. The frustrated Lucia then grabbed his hand. I'm asking for your hand, you staring at. You should have told me then. When their hands connected, Jinhyuk felt a strange feeling as if an energy was transmitted to him. He instinctively tried to retract his hand when he felt like being shocked by a static electricity. But Lucia held on to his hand tightly. Don't be scared. Remember this feeling. Jinhyuk listened to Lucia and tried to accept the unfamiliar feeling. How am I supposed to remember this? I'm no martial arts master. As he endured the uncomfortable feeling and focused on doing what he was told, Jinhyuk realized that the sensation transmitted from Lucia's hand was being passed onto his body. When he turned his attention to her hand, he saw the blue energy blooming like a haze. He knew what it was immediately. Oh, he's more talented than what I expected. Lucia was amused by the state of Jinhyuk's body. If he does well, he'll get down the basics within the day. Lucia recognized Jinhyuk's innate talent because the mana was moving well throughout his body. Right, now do you know how it feels? Try it. Try that. Right now. It usually takes decades just to build the necessary mana, but you can just compensate with your divine power from being a cleric. As he repeated the skill over and over again until he ran out of potions, the shield that he summoned did not take on a proper form and began to crush. It seemed like a simple skill failure. However, there is very little probability that a skill would fail if he has enough MP. It was evident that the divine power used in his skill was being directed in a different direction. Is this really possible? His expectations grew little by little. And then, a notification appeared before his eyes. You have learned a skill. Divine Power. Level 1. Lucia noticed a slight leak of aura from Jinhyuk's hand. The truth is, it was too faint of a haze to even call it an aura, but it seemed like it. Kang Jin-hyeok, who learned a new skill, was showing full motivation. I can't believe there's another way to obtain skills other than the ones given by my specialty. Jinhyuk checked the information on his new passive skill. Divine Power. Level 1. In addition to certain skills, Divine Power can be used arbitrarily. Current level. F. When used, Holy Power is attributed. Increased attack and defense in proportion to consumed MP. Jinhyuk saw something he was curious about. I can use Divine Power on top of certain skills. It can be interpreted that the Divine Power could be used for skills other than those specialized for clerics, but he has no way to confirm that. I don't have non-cleric skills. It's a shame that he couldn't experiment with his new skill. Still, it wasn't disappointing at all because he still has a lot to learn. After 3 days of non-stop effort, Jinhyuk was able to get his hands on it. An active skill that enables him to use Aura. Holy Aura, materializing the power of faith through Aura. Current skill level. F. Strengthens the body or weapon once given Aura. Damage caused by Aura cannot be offset other than by another Aura. As his body was aching in pain, it became tolerable after he read the skill description. Lee Junkyal waited for Jinhyuk to come into the conference room. The separate one that serves VIPs only. He checked the agenda for today's meeting when he heard the door open. Welcome and come. What's the matter? It's nothing. Jinhyuk's complexion wasn't very good, and he didn't speak much. His eyes looked very tired, and his hair seemed flaky. He looked like someone who just returned from remote areas after suffering for a long time. Jinhyuk leaned on the sofa as if he was about to collapse. If you're exhausted, we can hold the meeting some other time. I'm here to collect my money, so I won't be doing that. Jinhyuk sighed loudly, put a pouch-type inventory on the table. I brought in the monster corpses separately, so go check its quality. If it's something that Mr. Jinhyuk brought, then I think won't need to do that. Junkyal said that as if he had absolute trust in Jinhyuk, but he in fact doesn't. He will be checking thoroughly for the quantity and quality of the corpses after Jinhyuk leaves. It was merely lip service to please Jinhyuk. Just as you called for in advance. 21 goblin corpses, 21 kobold corpses, and 6 orc corpses. I should head home and get some sleep. Jinhyuk yawned and stretched out his arms and legs. He sold the monster corpses and even the mithril alcohol, so all that's left for him is to rest his tired body. However, things doesn't always go the way he wanted. The sleepiness completely left Jinhyuk's body as he heard the evacuation broadcast along with a loud siren sound. For a moment he thought that a war broke out, but the moment he saw a wyvern crossing the sky, he realized what was going on. Why is this going on right here on the streets? Wouldn't 1 or 2 guilds at least know of this? There were more than 10 of them at least. How did this happen? It was never normal for so many monsters to run around in the open. Feeling the situation getting serious, Jinhyuk took out his bat from his inventory. Don't tell me today is. Jinhyuk took out his phone and checked the alert message. He found out that his guess was right. He's not sure whether he's lucky or not. Of all days, today was the day of the monthly massive monster invasion. Why did this happen today? Employees dispatched by the association guided the civilians in evacuating. Usually, when such a large-scale invasion takes place, large guilds cooperate with each other to defend against the monsters. Which is why it's rare to see monsters entering the city with no guilds around. However, by this time, monsters were infiltrating the sky and even the grounds everywhere. It started earlier than expected. Can I handle this alone? As Jinhyuk looked around, he saw that the monsters running around in the city were low-leveled ones that even D-rank hunters could hunt. Seeing those monsters walking around with no guilds around, Jinhyuk could roughly guess what was going on. They only want to hunt the high-level ones. They're leaving the low-level monsters to other hunters. That was technically a good thing for low-level hunters not belonging in a guild. Jinhyuk would have been more than glad enough to take care of this in the past. However, not that he has an exclusive dungeon, he doesn't really need these monsters. Small monsters like these roam around inside the dungeon. Even if he caught some of these, he would just unnecessarily waste the physical strength he has left. I could just go home and sleep. Even if Jinhyuk didn't intervene here, other hunters would gladly deal with these monsters. This large-scale invasion doesn't happen very often, but it's impossible for guilds or even other hunters to defend against this even if it started a bit early. Jinhyuk yawned so loudly that his eyes teared up as he tried to hurry home. However, he stopped in his tracks shortly after a loud announcement. This is to inform all hunters. The current situation is very urgent, so if you are able to hunt a monster currently attacking the city, we'll compensate it threefold. The above condition is limited to today. Hunters who want to be compensated should visit the association with their items, and we will confirm if it's caught within today. Hunters should do so as soon as the current situation settles down. Jinhyuk heard cheers bursting from every direction. Other hunters exclaimed in joy after hearing that message. Threefold, you mean? Not only is it an opportunity to legally sell monster corpses without going through an illegal organization, but the compensation for it is tripled too. It was foolish to choose to sleep with such an opportunity right in front of him. Jinhyuk immediately turned around and dashed back towards the city. Aim for the head, you guys. The center of the massive invasion was surrounded by a boundary set up by Titan's guild members. Most guild members jumped into the hunt, and only a small number of people maintained it. Due to the lack of personnel, not all monsters were blocked by the boundary. Don't waste your strength in fighting these monsters. Focus your energy on maintaining the boundary. Guild executives ran around hard and led the members. They're usually nothing more than people decorated in dark outfits who only care about profit, but they faithfully played their original role during this crisis. The executives may be greedy, but that doesn't mean that they're incompetent. It was because of their power that the Titans continue to exist as a large guild. There's a bit of room in the west, so I'll take 10 people here and head there. Understood. The guild members also followed the executive's instructions amid the crisis. They were like soldiers operating under a proper command system. Seo Sangho was able to fight with confidence thanks to the executive leading the other guild members on their own. Guild leader. Troops in Yoon Taeyun's side are being pushed back. I'll come to them soon. Tell them to hang in there. Seo Sangho eliminated the monsters around him with his bare fist and ran to the place that needed help. The power of the S-rank hunter shone in this difficult situation. The monsters couldn't even get close to him as they were torn apart. The only thing that could withstand his power were large monsters whose size exceeds 5 meters. The guild members gained confidence at the sight of Seo Sangho's incredible skills, but Sangho himself feels like he's dying. Come on, it's a kill or be killed situation. It's not supposed to be this hard because situations like this is supposed to be dealt with in cooperation with other guilds. He didn't know he'd miss the other guilds so much when they weren't around. Why did everyone go overseas at the same time? This reminds me of that time when I do group assignments on my own. Sangho sighed as he dropped his head for a moment, but he had to raise his head again at the cries of his guild members. If a large number of high-level monsters appears, their current troops wouldn't be able to cope. The secretary realized that it's necessary to hire non-guild members for help before it was too late. Since the executives aren't available to give their permission at the moment, the secretary left the area while avoiding their eyes. The woman also recognized her. Sangho's secretary stopped running and approached Jinhyuk. You're Kang Jin-hyeok SSI, right? Do you have time right now? No. I was just about to head home. If you don't have any other plans, please help us out for a second. The secretary spoke with urgency. Jinhyuk felt déjà vu from when that Titan's hunter asked him for help. Is it the Titans taking care of the monster invasion? Yes. Is it a difficult situation to settle with just the guild members? Did the rumor spread already? How did you know that? Jinhyuk was speechless and almost laughed in vain. The situation was no different from before. It seems that Titan's specialty is to inconvenience hunters and rush them only after the situation gets out of hand. Did they not learn? Jinhyuk had no choice to take out his baseball bat once more. How much are you going to pay me? Do you want to be paid by the hour? Or by the results? Clerics usually prefer to be paid by the hour. This is because clerics are specialized in assisting. They don't really run on the field unlike other hunters. However, Jinhyuk chose the latter with no hesitation. Pay me by the results. Aren't you a cleric? Kang Jin-hyeok SSI. That's right. So why? Jinhyuk returned the secretary's question. Do you know what true healing means? I don't know. Saving even those who are dead. No, it's removing the threat to damage itself. That's the ultimate form of healing. The secretary looked blank, wondering what nonsense Jinhyuk was saying. He's planning on rushing towards the monsters even though he's a mere cleric. The secretary contemplated whether to stop him or not, but she ended up sighing. In this urgent situation, they can't afford to waste more time. Alright, do as you please. Instead, we'll only reward you if you reach the quota on this counter. The secretary spoke in a cold tone as she handed over an item that looked like a watch. What's this for? It's a tool that measures the magic power of monsters and accumulates it. That number is your score. For example, a goblin was equivalent to 1 point, while orcs were 3 points. Catching 100 goblins and 3 orcs totals to 109 points. This tool had only been developed recently. It's being aimed to be used actively to prevent cheating. The average score of hunters in charge of the front line is currently 82 points. If you want to get a reward, you need to score more than that. Aren't you being too strict with me? You're here as an employee, not as a dealer. He swung his bat vigorously towards an ogre that other hunters were facing. His bat hit the ogre's club, which broke into pieces with a loud sound on impact. Oh. The ogre stared at his destroyed club with a foolish face. It seems like it's astonished that such a small human, who was not even taller than his waist, was able to break his club. How long are you gonna stare at that broken thing? Jinhyuk sprang up from the ground and rose above the ogre's head in just one jump. That's the only time the ogre took its eyes off its broken club and tried to avoid the attack. However, it was already too late. The bat wielded by Kang Jin-hyeok shattered the ogre's head easily as if it's popping a balloon. The ogre quickly lost its head, and its huge body collapsed on the ground, causing thick soil dust to rise. Woo! Jinhyuk landed on the ogre's body. He took out the counter and checked his score. This ogre is 12 points. Then I only need to catch 6 more. Leaving the astonished hunters behind, Jinhyuk moved towards his next target. Well, if I want to justify having a lot of money by hunting, then it's good that I'm displaying my skills in front of everyone. Jinhyuk doesn't trust the Titans, and he knows that they don't trust him either. Even if the counter was working properly, he's sure that he'll receive doubts later on. Let's see. I think it's a bit messy over there. As he searched for crowded areas, he naturally entered scenes of most crises. Powerful monsters were overpowering a number of hunters. That was Jinhyuk's next prey. Jinhyuk jumped up and down as he gulped another potion. No matter how solid a monster's skull was, they're no match for Jinhyuk's bat. At some point, the counter's score already exceeds 82 points. Killing monsters that even a rank hunters struggle with in just one hit. What kind of person is that guy? The hunters began paying attention to Jinhyuk, who hit monsters one after another. They admired Jinhyuk's skills but questioned him at the same time. I can't believe I've never heard of such a skilled hunter. Only those who participated in the previous hunt knew Jinhyuk's name and face. One person was watching the scene from afar. It was none other than the guy that Jinhyuk beat up, On Do-yoon. Hell, did that kid get this good? On Do-yoon, who was watching Jinhyuk from afar, stroked his chin. Watching Jinhyuk jump around reminds him of the pain that the kid inflicted on him. Why does that kid keep showing up in front of me? On Do-yoon didn't know why or how Jinhyuk got so strong in such a short period of time. His existence became even more annoying for On Do-yoon. I risk my life every day in battle, but my level barely goes up. What the hell does this kid do? Jinhyuk couldn't have visited hunting grounds where monsters appear frequently. On Do-yoon knew that the kid doesn't go out of his house much, let alone hunt outside. The truth was, On Do-yoon was secretly investigating Kang Jin-hyeok and plotting his revenge on the kid that humiliated him. The moment that he thought, what if he's just much more talented than me, On Do-yoon choked up and felt emotional. He doesn't want to be pushed over by this guy. He felt like crazy when he saw the other hunters admire Jinhyuk's performance. It's because of this kid that I'm no longer the deputy guild leader. Do-yoon can't stand it that Jinhyuk is doing so well. He fell down from such a high position, and he has to crawl his way back up. Now is the only chance to create that opportunity. On Do-yoon thought so and let go of any reason left in him. It was too late when a nearby colleague noticed On Do-yoon's unexpected incident. On Do-yoon hardened his resolve and raced towards the field with a sword in both hands. The only thing in his eyes was the back of Kang Jin-hyuk's head. Jinhyuk was at his most defenseless moment because it's right after he caught a monster. On Do-yoon aimed for a perfect timing. The fact that he even thought of going out here even though there were so many hunters present meant that On Do-yoon was fully resolved. He was abandoned by the executives, treated as a nuisance by the guild leader himself. On Do-yoon blamed Jinhyuk for everything, and he channeled his anger to his sword as he swung it towards him. And when he saw his sword break in half, all of his anger turned into regret. Jinhyuk didn't feel the need to question his opponent at all. Why did he do this? Did he really intend to kill me? No matter what question he thinks of, there's no way any answer would make him understand why the other person decided to do such a thing. So instead of asking mundane questions, he decided to copy what the other tried to do. Kang Jin-hyuk's bat hit on Do-yoon's head with as much force as possible. It sounded like a watermelon bursting. After seeing him collapse like a puppet with its string cut off, Jinhyuk turned his back on him. It was none of his concern whether the man died this way. It was this guy's problem. He didn't come to this place as an enemy, so he doesn't know why he was suddenly attacked like this. Just what did he do wrong for this guy to rush towards him as if nothing else mattered in the world? He didn't know what kind of bottled-up emotions On Do-yoon had towards him, but Jinhyuk believed that he was the victim here. The punishments that On Do-yoon suffered are all because of his actions. Nothing else. There was no reason for Jinhyuk to take responsibility for it. He got hit properly this time, so I guess he'll think about his actions more next time. Even beasts learn their lesson when they're hit. Now that he's fallen in such a shameful way, maybe he'd think twice before coming at Jinhyuk again. Jinhyuk moved on to a strong monster to shake off this unpleasant feeling. Near the area was a minotaurus which wielded an axe the size of a person. Move aside if you're not gonna finish him off. What? While Sang-ho was flustered at the sudden sight of Kang Jin-hyuk, Jinhyuk swung his bat towards the minotaurus temple. The minotaurus, who was hit in its vital point, fell to the floor with its eyes rolled back. Kang Jin-hyuk immediately checked the score on his counter. What the? The score didn't change. When he looked back at the minotaurus, he realized that the monster has just fainted. It wasn't dead yet. Realizing that fact, Jinhyuk clucked his tongue in disappointment. So I can't kill a minotaurus in one hit just yet. Even with his improved abilities thanks to his passive skills, his fundamental skills were still insufficient for him to achieve such a feat. However, it was only in Jinhyuk's own standards that made him feel like he was lacking. From Seo Sang-ho's point of view, he had already exceeded what normal people could do. A recently turned C-rank hunter killed a minotaurus. Even if Seo Sang-ho blocked the monster's attack, it was impossible for a C-rank hunter to knock out such a huge monster in one blow. On top of that, Jinhyuk was a cleric. Isn't that a specialty that doesn't have many combat-related skills? The more he thought about it, the more things didn't make sense. Sang-ho kind of like that. Jinhyuk is clearly different from other hunters. That specialness caught Sang-ho's attention. Seo Sang-ho now realizes why he got so greedy and passionate to recruit Jinhyuk. As expected, my instincts never fail me. Seo Sang-ho held back from trying to recruit Jinhyuk right away again. Jinhyuk's reception towards the offer so far tells him that he would only feel burdened again. I see you've come here as a mercenary. Jinhyuk affirmed Sang-ho's question with a nod. I heard that they're going to pay me as much as I catch. I'm allowed to just run around and do this, right? Do as you please. As soon as he heard Sang-ho's answer, Jinhyuk swung his bat toward the minotaurus again. No matter how hard the monster's skull was, it couldn't stand against continuous strikes of the bat shrouded with aura. In the end, after 7 hits, the minotaurus lost its breath as blood spilled from its head. Jinhyuk saw his level rise rapidly after the monster died. It won't take too long to reach 150 now. Level 150 was the standard for B-rank hunters, and it's the stage where secondary advancement becomes possible. Jinhyuk was looking forward to getting his secondary specialty, as it was randomly decided depending on the activities he does as a hunter. It may open up an opportunity for him to go for a large-scale hunt. Alright then, I'll leave this place to you. Jinhyuk thought he had no time to hesitate and tried to leave towards a different monster right away. Just in time, he gestured towards his earpiece, saying that he had just been contacted. As soon as the communication connected, the urgent voice of a guild member came up. All right, where are you and what's going on? The sky. Sang-ho raised his head and looked up. When both Sang-ho and Jinhyuk raised their heads, dark clouds came into view. The surroundings were all clear skies, but the place where the fight was going on had strange dark clouds hovering over it. What's the big deal about this? How many are there? How big is it? At the same time as the guild members' report, a flashing light was seen from the center of the dark clouds. The lightning already hit the middle of the battlefield before anyone realized it. The sudden flood of lightning struck several hunters as they screamed and collapsed. The lightning just poured down on the area. Whether it was a monster or a hunter, everything hit by it was mercilessly destroyed. Seo Sang-ho, who witnessed the disaster, went silenced for a while. It's absurd to suddenly see lightning pouring out. It was the first time in his life that he saw 7 or 8 times as many monsters than normal. With that size, even if there was no lightning, the falling monsters alone could devastate the area. Why are you reporting that just now? What did the government say? How is the helicopter going to help? None of the conventional weapons work against monsters. Only hunters can fight against monsters, so they have no choice but to go directly into the sky to catch the monsters hidden among the clouds. But it's too much to go against it. Even if just when everyone thought that the battle was dying down, the appearance of a new monster turned the tables. It was a disaster for every hunter. Thunderstorm poured down on the ground with no means to block it. In order to get out of this crisis, they have to quickly subdue the new monster. However, they currently do not have a grasp on what kind of monster it is, let alone how to deal with it. Because of the dark clouds, they haven't caught a proper glimpse of the monster yet. They can only guess how huge this new monster is. The lightning rod is installed. Did you install them in all the places I ordered you to? Yes, we're sure of it. Seo Sang-ho bit his lower lip at the sight of the thunderbolts. The attacks haven't subsided at all. He thought that the lightning rods would help minimize it to some extent. Unfortunately, it wasn't very effective. Seo Sang-ho quickly came up with the next plan. He immediately asked the magicians that he ordered to be contacted. Can you shoot the monster hidden in that cloud? I think it's too much for us to handle. It's too far high up. The cloud was around 34,200 feet from the ground. The magicians said that even if their skills can reach that far up, the damage from their power would be decreased significantly. In short, it's impossible to shoot the monster down with skills. I see. We have no choice but to get closer to it. Although the risk was high, there's no other choice now but to try using the helicopters that the government sent for support. It's a good thing that they sent it in advance. It was too dangerous for the guild leader to personally approach the monster that they knew nothing about. But there was no other way that came to his mind. Seo Sang-ho thought that this was the time for him to step up. He made up his mind against the objection of the executives. There's a helicopter coming. As they looked to where the guild member pointed, they saw a helicopter approaching from afar. However, Seo Sang-ho witnessed the helicopter fall from the sky with his own eyes. The lightning struck the helicopter accurately, burning the people inside. My goodness! The helicopter that crashed to the ground caused a huge explosion. Smokes emerged from the burning helicopter. Seo Sang-ho's expression looked dejected at the sight of it. How is it possible for a guy who can't distinguish enemy from allies to accurately hit that helicopter? It can't distinguish enemies from allies, of course. It just detects movement and shoots it accurately. It was Kang Jin-hyeok who answered the guild member's question. Are we supposed to catch it then? Kang Jin-hyeok, who was watching the scene unfold quietly, walked toward the table. There's something I want to ask you. When the executives tried to protest at the sight of the C-rank hunter approaching their guild leader, Seo Sang-ho raised his hands to stop them. What is it? Just how much do we need to smash that monster up in the clouds to get rid of its debris? I think 1/3 of its weight is the limit to what we can divide it. Considering the height from where the body would fall, that's the best that Seo Sang-ho could do. Then please come out and get ready when I contact you. Seo Sang-ho and the Titan's executives all looked shocked at Kang Jin-hyeok's words. Does that mean that you can catch the monster? I'm not sure, but I'll go ahead and give it a shot first. You'll give it a shot. While Seo Sang-ho was speechless, the Titan executive, Han Young-suk, stood up. Are you kidding me? Who are you to come forward in this situation? There's something that I want to test. Han Young-suk snickered as if ignoring what Kang Jin-hyeok said. He was well aware of Kang Jin-hyeok's identity as the guy who knocked down On Do-yoon with a baseball bat. He was the person who tarnished the guild's reputation, so he investigated Jinhyuk in hopes of retaliating someday. You're a C-rank hunter at best. You think you're worth something. You think you can do something. I'd rather do something useful than sitting around in here. Don't you think? Han Young-suk turned red at Kang Jin-hyuk's words. His words made him angry because it seemed like Kang Jin-hyuk was implying that the executives were being useless at the moment. More than 30 minutes have passed since Kang Jin-hyuk left the temporary shelter. At first, when they heard that he had passed the defensive line and went outside, the other hunters had a spark of hope. They haven't heard from him since then, which made them suspicious of Jinhyuk. Don't tell me he ran away. Seo Sang-ho, who was positively cheering on Kang Jin-hyuk, also felt a little doubt this time. He knows that Jinhyuk's abilities are excellent, but in this case, even an S-rank hunter like himself isn't confident about killing the monster. Swing the bat well wasn't the solution to their problem. If he didn't run away, then I guess he was just bluffing. It's either of the two. While contacting other S-ran hunters and looking for other solutions, Seo Sang-ho tried to forget about Kang Jin-hyuk. And then, right at an unexpected moment, a call from Kang Jin-hyuk was received by his smartphone. He saw the caller ID as the phone was placed at the center of the table. All right, start getting ready. The call was cut off after Jinhyuk said a short phrase. Seo Sang-ho wondered what nonsense this was. Jinhyuk's words went beyond his mind as he had suspicions about him. He's telling me to get ready. It can't be. What could the C-rank hunter mean by that? Sang-ho thought that Jinhyuk was just buying time, so he tried to ignore what he said. Just then, a roar came over the wall of the shelter. What? When Seo Sang-ho heard the roaring sound that shook the ground, he immediately jumped from his seat and ran outside. He looked straight up at the sky and saw a ray of light just across the clouds. And then, a loud, sad scream of the new monster, that caused all the hunters to suffer so far, resonated throughout the area. She placed an arrow on her bow, and she's confident that this distance and the wind would be enough to hit the target well. You promised to bring me unlimited sweet food every day. You better know that if you break that promise, the next thing to be pierced by my arrow is your head. Jinhyuk inadvertently shrugs his shoulders at the sincere threat. It was ridiculous that his life is now entrusted to his ability to bring as many sweet foods as he can. You can hit it right. What are you talking about? How can I miss such a huge thing? After giving a short warning, Lucia immediately let go of the bow's string. As Jinhyuk was stepping back, he was surprised when a huge sound broke out from Lucia's bow. To make matters worse, Jinhyuk fell backward and lost his balance. As Jinhyuk fell on his butt, the arrow flew in a straight line at full speed like a sun's ray towards the enemy. The monster hiding in the clouds had no time to respond, and the arrow reached its target in a blink of an eye. The monster's body took on the overflowing blue aura of the arrow. All of it was absorbed into the monster's body. After a few seconds, it caused an explosion with an even louder noise than when the arrow was fired. The person who created such an amazing scene lightly shrugged her shoulders. Thief, that monster's no big deal. In the aftermath of the explosion, the dark clouds surrounding the monster's body had disappeared. What's with the fuss? This is no big deal. Lucia smiled at Jinhyuk, who was still lost in his thoughts. For her, even level 300 monsters didn't seem to pose much a threat. Jinhyuk had no choice but to acknowledge Lucia's greatness. All the hunters back at the site were struggling, yet it only took one arrow for Lucia to deal with it. Thanks for your help. I don't need your gratitude. I'm not helping you for free. Lucia said it wasn't that big of a deal, but the help that she made was really big. If Lucia wasn't here, who would have caught that monster called Leviathan? No, would it even be possible to catch it? They don't know if the magicians from the Getia would cooperate, and if the situation had been prolonged, the defensive line might have completely collapsed and civilians would start getting hurt. Even though Lucia helped them get out of such a huge crisis, the only price she had asked for in return is sweet food. Convinced that the Leviathan was dead, Lucia took out a counter that she had kept in her arms. All right, this means that the monster is captured now, right? The counter that Jinhyuk made Lucia hold had a shocking high score. It's obvious that most of it was thanks to Lucia killing the Leviathan. Does that really prove that you caught the monster? Of course. That high score clearly indicates that the monster is caught. Jinhyuk spoke confidently, but Lucia's expression looked a bit sour. Don't trust people too much. You don't know how many times I've been tricked while I was an adventurer. Even if the evidence was clear on the counter, it does make sense that humans are bound to take back their words somehow. One piece of evidence wasn't enough to get the fair reward. Jinhyuk knew at least that. Don't worry, I think their leader is on my side, so I know I'm not getting backstabbed just yet. Jinhyuk had confidence because of Seo Sangho's presence. It was Seo Sangho who kept wanting to recruit him to the guild, so the leader is more likely to support the fact that Jinhyuk caught the Leviathan. Seo Sangho saw Jinhyuk and approached him with a welcoming face. You've worked very hard, and done a very good job. It was a truly great performance. Jinhyuk was quite surprised to hear Sangho's greeting. He didn't know that the guild leader would voluntarily acknowledge his achievements. Sangho shook the confused Jinhyuk's hand and asked him a question. Can you tell me how you caught the monster? Ah, that's my secret. I asked a favor from the half-elf at the dungeon, and she shot the monster with her arrow. Jinhyuk couldn't just honestly say the answer, so he decided to avoid the question. Just then, Han Young-suk appeared from behind Seo Sangho. He complained as veins popped out from his neck. What do you mean, secret? You can't say how you caught the monster because it wasn't you who caught it. Jinhyuk was quite relieved that the one making a fuss didn't seem that powerful. Yeah, I expected this from you guys. It makes no sense for those who have been monopolizing monsters to suddenly be generous and gently acknowledge other people's achievements. Jinhyuk almost lost grasp of common sense because of the strange and odd Seo Sangho. Look at this if you don't believe me. Jinhyuk scoffed as he took out the counter that the secretary gave to him. The executive who was screaming around suddenly had his eyes widened at the sight of the score accumulated on the counter. 240 points. That's impossible. The score on Seo Sangho's counter was 173. The fact that Jinhyuk had 70 points higher than Sangho was a testament to his great abilities. However, the Titan's executive still didn't want to admit and acknowledge the score even after seeing it personally. Don't be ridiculous. He obviously just brought a counter with that score already before coming in here. How can I do that when I just received this counter today? Right here in this place. Why, you got it from here. Who gave this to you? It was Seo Sangho's secretary. She approached the executive and told the truth. I gave it to him in case he tried to lie about his achievements from today. When the executive heard her explanation and looked back at the counter, he saw the guild symbol of the Titans engraved in it. It was absolutely impossible to switch to a different counter, because it even had the unique identification number on it. When the situation became clearly against his side, the executive clucked his tongue roughly and made an annoyed face. Then you just need to get paid in the back. Why did you come here? Why do you think? I'm here because I had something to bring. What do you mean? Instead of answering with his words, Jinhyuk pointed to the Leviathan's corpse with his finger. The executive saw it and jumped as if he was having a seizure. What nonsense are you trying to say? Why would you take that? Well, I caught that monster, so I have the right to take it. We're the guild that prevented it from falling. If it weren't for the guild leader, do you think that body would be left intact? Even if the executive could afford to give money to Kang Jin-hyeok, he couldn't bear to just hand over the Leviathan corpse to Kang Jin-hyeok. The material of such a new monster was very precious for them. At least hundreds of millions of won could be collected just by handing it over to the association, and profits were most likely to snowball if it's auctioned. Jinhyuk just sighed at the attitude being shown by Han Young-suk. I told you this before. I told you not to whine at me when I bring back the monster corpse later on. What did you say? Kang Jin-hyuk's argument was indeed valid. Even if they resorted to a legal battle, Jinhyuk's demands would still be deemed legitimate. Even Han Young-suk knew that. However, he couldn't just bear to hand over the monster corpse to someone like Jinhyuk. Han Young-suk decided to use his power as an executive of the large guild. Han Young-suk tried to do something stupid. He wanted to permanently shut Jinhyuk's mouth. However, before he could do anything, Seo Sangho came out first. Stop it with your ugly antics and give him what he deserves. We already have a lot of money, why are you being so greedy? As it was the Titans Guild leader, Seo Sangho, Han Young-suk couldn't do anything more. He just has to watch Kang Jin-hyuk take the Leviathan's corpse. Han Young-suk glanced at Seo Sangho, who was holding on to his arm, with poisonous eyes. Just on whose side are you on? Although Seo Sangho was the guild leader, His attitude of prioritizing the C-rank hunter over the guild was simply incomprehensible for Han Young-suk. Although the Titans Guild members and the others involved remained silent, rumors began to spread that it was a C-rank hunter who defeated the monster in the sky. Even though a lot of people did not believe the absurd story, the rumor was quickly spread by word. The news of the serial killer who only targets guild hunters became temporarily forgotten because of Jinhyuk's performance. The information-sensitive scouts of large guilds began their own investigations upon hearing those rumors. Rumors are unreliable, but for them, it was worth betting on the possibility of, if. In this day and age where the guilds are competing with each other, the promising rising hunter was a valuable resource. Guilds who wanted to strengthen their position were naturally interested in this matter. Korea's #1 guild, Ultron, was no exception. I heard the guild leader of Titans personally contacted him. I heard that too, but I heard he refused. If the S-rank hunter personally recruits this person, then it seems like that hunter is not just an ordinary talent. The Ultron Guild scouts were in agony as they launched their investigations. Titans was one of the top 5 guilds in Korea. Even though it was the guild leader himself who approached the hunter, it was clear that he didn't give a good enough proposal given that the hunter refused to join. Just how great is this hunter? The new hunter stood out only recently, so there's ridiculously insufficient information that the guilds can collect about him. There are only 2 confirmed facts amid all kinds of rumors. The fact that the hunter wields an aluminum bat, and he used that same bat to beat up the A-rank hunter who tried to hurt him. Did you get any information about the A-rank hunter who was hospitalized? They're saying it's the Titans hunter, On Do-yoon. What? That guy is really skilled though. I don't think a mere C-rank hunter can do that to him. The reason why On Do-yoon was not kicked out of Titans even though he caused all kinds of trouble was because of his fighting power and performance. That's what I think so too. He was once the guild's deputy leader. I can't believe he's beaten by a C-rank hunter. The defeat of a famously talented person means that this new hunter's skills were that good. I think he is part of a hidden class. Isn't it too early to determine that? No, there's plenty of potential in him. The Ultron scout was confident in his intuition. The hidden class was said to be about 0.1% of the hunter population. It didn't make sense for a C-rank hunter to beat On Do-yoon without being part of the hidden class. If he really is part of the hidden class, then we have to hurry up before we lose him to another guild. The Ultron scouts began to get nervous. Their guild was able to reach the top of the country thanks to hunters of the hidden class. They have as many as 3 hidden class hunters. The Ultron was very keen on other guilds recruiting hunters from the hidden class. But the best way to attract those hunters is to pose as their allies. I think he should at least be given the position as a deputy guild leader. Really? You want to go that far to recruit him? What do you mean? That hunter refused the offer of the guild leader of Titans. It's obvious that he'll do the same to us if we don't give him a better offer. That makes sense. Just because the hunter was only of C rank doesn't mean that they should underestimate him. They were already sure and confident that Kang Jin-hyeok belongs to the hidden class. Contrary to their expectations, however, Kang Jin-hyeok was nothing like that. The hunter in question was currently stretching his limbs. He excessively pushed himself and his stamina for the past week. Kang Jin-hyeok was in deep sleep for more than 2 days without knowing that rumors about him were being spread. It was after he opened his eyes due to the tremendous hunger that he realized the issue that he caused. Kang Jin-hyeok picked up his phone and checked today's date. What the? Jinhyuk was surprised that he fell asleep and woke up 2 days later. And he was surprised again to see Lucia calmly going through his fridge. Lucia stopped taking out apples from the vegetable compartment and waved happily when she made eye contact with Jinhyuk. You're finally awake. I thought you died because you collapsed as soon as you got home. Jinhyuk tried to rake his head and tried to remember what happened before this situation. However, no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't understand what was going on at the moment. Why are you still here? Peef, look at you, you're not even grateful that I looked over you while you were passed out. What nonsense. You didn't take care of me. I'm wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago. Jinhyuk felt gross that he slept for 2 days in his dirty clothes. Lucia laughed at Jinhyuk's visible dissatisfaction. Try to put yourself in my shoes. Would you want to help me change my clothes if they were that dirty? Put me in your shoes. Lucia just ignored Jinhyuk and harshly threw an apple at him. What are you imagining, you crazy punk? Jinhyuk ducked in a hurry before the apple could hit his head. Don't waste other people's food. Go back to the dungeon. I would have gone back if I could. Why would I even want to stay in this dirty place? What do you mean? I can't go back even if I wanted to. Just go back using the same method we used to get here. It was an absurdly simple thing to do that Jinhyuk was in disbelief that Lucia didn't know how to do it. You couldn't go back to the dungeon even when you opened the door. Yeah, I'm not kidding, I really couldn't go back. Looking at Lucia's face, it doesn't seem like she's joking. Jinhyuk walked in front of the attic door with his heart pounding. He slowly opened the door. Contrary to his concerns, Jinhyuk smiled in vain when he found the dungeon still intact. Thanks. It looks normal though. What? No way. Look for yourself if you don't believe me. Lucia, who walked toward the attic, confirmed that the dungeon was intact. Even though she saw it with her own eyes, she snooped her head and murmured in disbelief. It wasn't here when I opened it though. Lucia pushed Jinhyuk slightly aside and closed the attic door. When Lucia opened the door again, the dungeon disappeared just as she expected. The only thing left was the ordinary attic. Look, I told you it's not here. What? Jinhyuk saw the inside of the attic and felt like he was at a magic show. How could different results show when they're opening and closing the same door? What is happening? Since the appearance of a dungeon in the attic, he never had anyone else open this door. Jinhyuk had no idea that this would happen. Lucia fell into deep thought with her arms folded. In the meantime, Jinhyuk ordered some delivery food while Lucia was sorting out the most likely hypothesis. I think this is because of the coordinates carved by the crazy wizard. Can you explain that a bit better? What I'm saying is that this dungeon's destination is you. Lucia spoke with confidence as if she were more than half sure. However, Jinhyuk barely understood her explanation. First of all, dimension shifting wasn't a thing of common sense, and most of all, it was absurd that Kang Jin-hyeok himself was the destination. Then why didn't the dungeon fall over my head instead of the attic? It's because the magic failed. If the magic were successful, Jinhyuk would have been crushed by the dungeon. Lucia jokingly explained. In short, I would have died for no reason if the magic went through. You got that right. Jinhyuk was deeply grateful that that didn't happen. However, from this moment on, he would become anxious. He might get crushed by a dungeon after all. Jinhyuk clenched his fists. Then, like a ghost, a loud sound came from his stomach. His empty stomach began to protest as it couldn't endure the hunger anymore. The food isn't here yet. His stomach was almost stuck to his back as he didn't eat for 2 days. Fortunately, the delivery man came just in time. Jinhyuk found the delivery man after a few seconds. What are you doing over here? The delivery man was wandering right in front of Kang Jin-hyuk's house. It was only after Jinhyuk went out that the delivery rider seemed to have noticed that there was a house there. Oh, are you the one who ordered delivery? Yes, it's me. This is odd. How did I not find the house when it's right there? The delivery man was still confused after he left. The same was true of Kang Jin-hyuk. It was strange no matter how much he thought about it. Jinhyuk entered the house with a visibly confused face. Who was it? Jinhyuk answered Lucia's question by taking out the food. I was hungry so I ordered some food. Oh, well, it's a relief the guy found this place. It would have been hard to find it because of the mask perception magic. Jinhyuk stopped moving the moment he heard Lucia. Her remarks were not something to be overlooked. What did you say? Mask perception magic. It's simple but it works well. Why is that on my house? Strange people kept coming here while you were sleeping. Strange people. Yeah, they said they were from Gideon. Ultron. I don't know. They were talking about something like guilds. Lucia mentioned the top 2 guilds in Korea. It wasn't normal for people from those large guilds to look for him. Jinhyuk searched for the latest news on his smartphone to see if any incident broke out. He found his name on the real-time search list in the community mainly used by hunters. Oh, what is this? Among the posts with Kang Jin-hyuk's name on them were videos of him helping the Titans 2 days ago. The video quality wasn't so good because it was filmed amid the commotion, but it was enough to prove Jinhyuk's skills. The most controversial news was none other than the new monster. Jinhyuk watched the exchange between him and the Titan's executives just before he went home. Kang Jin-hyeok didn't want the rumors to spread because he had received help from Lucia. Nevertheless, details were already circulating among the community. 14 to 18 minutes. Lucia saw how Jinhyuk's expression hardened. It was clear that there was something unusual going on given that the food was already in front of them and the hungry Jinhyuk still haven't taken a single bite. What's going on? Is there a problem? I don't know if I should call it a problem. Being a famous person wouldn't necessarily constitute a problem. But Jinhyuk is sure that the timing of the events was not good. The community almost always praises only S-rank hunters, so Jinhyuk doesn't feel very good about him being praised by them. An unexpected burden was suddenly put on his shoulders. The clueless Lucia became frustrated as Jinhyuk continued to stay silent. Stop looking so devastated on your own and just tell me what's going on. Well, Jinhyuk took a deep sigh before starting to explain. I think I did too well last time. All of this wouldn't have happened if I didn't bring Lucia out of the dungeon in the first place. Although it was Lucia who killed the Leviathan, it was Jinhyuk and his own strategizing skills that made it possible. As long as Lucia has no intention of claiming her right to the Leviathan's body, Jinhyuk had the justification to claim ownership. Thinking of the situation like that made Jinhyuk's guilt disappear. He realized that it was now time to come up with countermeasures on how to deal with it in the future rather than looking back on what was said and done. I need to get stronger. To cope with the expectations of the hunter community, he has to increase his current level and skills. The first thing that he has to do was to raise his level. She entered the dungeon first before Jinhyuk. The first stop was at the dwarf's place. When Jinhyuk took out the Leviathan corpse, the dwarf whistled quietly. A Leviathan. It's been a while. You've seen this kind of monster before. Of course. Although they're rare, they're sometimes just floating up in the sky. The Leviathan corpse covered a lot of ground at the workshop. The dwarf took a closer look at it. Thanks to the inventory storage, the condition of the corpse is still quite good. It was still fresh. But how come only the head is left? Where's the rest to its body? I blew it away. The dwarf shook his head upon hearing Lucia's answer. You didn't even know that you were wasting such precious material. Tisk tisk tisk, this is why young people aren't to be trusted. Oh ho, what are you talking about, old guy? Lucia and dwarf seemed to know each other, but they didn't look like they are on good terms. Don't spread your disgusting scent in my house. Leave, you jerk. If you give me the arrow that you were supposed to make for me, I'll happily leave on my own. The dwarf pointed to the corner of his workshop with an unpleasant look. He was pointing to an arrow box, thrown randomly at the floor like trash. Pick it up on your own and leave. Shouldn't you be a bit more courteous? Just take it and be thankful. You should be the one thanking me. Lucia stared at the dwarf with a poignant look. The dwarf also opened his eyes fiercely, not wanting to lose. The two seemed to want to take out their weapons and fight it out. Jinhyuk couldn't stand the two anymore, so he asked the dwarf something to try to change the subject. Can you make something out of that corpse? Let's see. Wait here for a bit. The dwarf stood in front of the Leviathan's corpse with a hammer. Thanks. And then, he hit the top of the corpse's head with all his might. He hit it so hard that the sound of the skull being smashed resonated loudly throughout the room. The dwarf split the Leviathan's head and rummaged through it with his gloved hands. All right, it's a relief that this one is still here. After a rough search, the dwarf found a small bead. What's that? This is the organ that allows this monster to use lightning. An organ? That small bead. That's right. It's a bit surprising that an internal organ allows the monster to produce lightning. It was even more amazing that such powerful lightning bolts were produced by this small bead, which was just about the size of a finger. Jinhyuk had one expectation. Is there any way to use that bead's power? Do you mean using it to produce thunderstorms? Yes. Lightning was the most burdensome thing for Jinhyuk and the other hunters when they were dealing with the Leviathan. It would definitely be a great advantage if he could utilize that power. It would be possible with enchantment. The dwarf's answer made Jinhyuk excited. Is that so? Don't get too excited. Give me your bat. Jinhyuk quickly took out his baseball bat out of his inventory and handed it over to dwarf. How long will it take to finish enchantment on this? This is quite difficult to enchant, so I guess I need about half a day. Half a day. He only has to wait for half a day to have his bat enchanted and enhanced once more. Jinhyuk smiled to himself. This bat would be worth millions of won. What should I pay for this? Tell me anything, I'll try to get it. Peef, what do you mean payment? No need, you punk. The dwarf gains a huge sense of accomplishment just by directly handling and strengthening the Oriharuken. From him, a creature who was born with the natural temperament of a craftsman, that sense of accomplishment was more than enough. No, I feel sorry to have you do this without giving you compensation. I told you I don't need anything like that. Just know that if you try to sell this Oriharuken bat, you'll get beaten up hard by me. It may be a common metal on Earth, but it's a rare metal in the dwarf's world. It's even called God's metal. The dwarf thought that there should be no distraction in his process of strengthening the bat. He's handling the God's metal after all. He needs to have much courtesy for it. If you want to help, kick that annoying punk out of here. I might lose my concentration if that woman stays here. The dwarf smiled at Lucia before going into his room. Kang Jin-hyeok witnessed Lucia's blood vessels pulse and rise one by one on her forehead. He panicked when Lucia pulled out an arrow and loaded it into her bow. Ah, no, hold it in. Calm down, calm down, calm down. Why should I? Lucia was about to blow up the workshop right away. He's a good old man even though he talks like that. What bullshits are you saying? What would it take to stop Lucia? Of course, Jinhyuk physically can't block her strength. Jinhyuk figured it out after a few seconds. The bakery owner laughed heartily as Jinhyuk once again purchased a large amount of desserts. Are you hosting some kind of event? Nope, I'm buying these to feed it to someone. Upon hearing Jinhyuk's response, the bakery owner thought that he must be supplying it to a kid's playground or a kindergarten or something. The owner doesn't think that there's a person that would eat this large amount of sweets on their own. Jinhyuk paid, handing over an envelope almost bulging to its limit. He didn't expect to experience such a heavy feeling just by buying desserts. At this point, he felt like he was carrying livestock feed. If you're going to eat like this, wouldn't it be better to just buy pure sugar from the supermarket? Jinhyuk wasn't sure about this too. How can a woman eat so much sugar alone? At this point, her blood could just be full of sugar. If I hadn't fed her that chocolate bar that time. Because a single chocolate bar, Lucia discovered sweet and sugary food. To exaggerate it a bit, her sugar obsession was almost like a drug addiction. But thanks to that, Jinhyuk was able to learn aura and catch the Leviathan. The more he thought about buying a huge pile of desserts, the more ridiculous and funnier it was for him. Jinhyuk headed straight home while holding 2 bags in both hands. He wanted to hurry back to the dungeon and level up. However, the situation that Jinhyuk faced now didn't allow for him to do that so easily. Jinhyuk was met with great trouble as he entered an alley. Oh no, this is annoying. Ever since he learned how to use aura, Jinhyuk's 5 senses have become extremely sensitive. He gained similar abilities to his bat in sensing danger. He could recognize something approaching him from the back. Could it be a monster with invincibility abilities? It could be a monster like the lizard men who could disguise its appearance. In movies and novels, there are sometimes scenes where the main character feels danger and attacks the invincible enemy first. But Jinhyuk doesn't have that ability yet. He had no idea who or where the enemy was. If he had his bat with him, he would have been able to pinpoint the enemy's location. He can only retaliate once the enemy is within his reach. Great. Tough luck for me. If it were a faint sense of danger, he could have just left it for other hunters to deal with. However, he could sense the enemy was moving along and following him to the alley. He doesn't know why, but he's sure that he's being targeted. Why is this happening? Jinhyuk's head was full of questions. He's never heard of monsters following and targeting a specific person. Oh no, is it because of the Leviathan's corpse? Although rare, monsters can sometimes be attracted to other monsters' corpses. Jinhyuk has first-hand experience with this. It happened during his first black market deal. Since it's the corpse of a new monster, it could have attracted attention from other monsters. Or maybe the bags of food in his hands were being targeted. In any case, it's clear to Jinhyuk that the enemy trailing him was attracted to something that he possessed. Jinhyuk has no intention of handing any of those over. The opponent hiding from Jinhyuk stopped moving for a while when Jinhyuk put down the bags that he was holding. When he saw Jinhyuk looking around, he realized that his presence was detected. Tish. The opponent approached Jinhyuk's left side silently. He won't be able to stop me even if he knows that I'm here. The opponent strongly believed that his attack could never fail. In a blink of an eye, the opponent swung and attacked Jinhyuk. However, when he came within reach, Jinhyuk accurately grasped his location. Thanks to his passive skills, his body's reaction speed was enhanced by the divine power and were several times faster than that of ordinary people. Oh. Jinhyuk was shocked to see the opponent's identity after he avoided the opponent's attack. He thought that it was a monster following him, but seeing the opponent now, he was certainly a human being. Jinhyuk did not understand at all why a person was aiming for him in broad daylight. Ah, perhaps this guy is the serial killer. Jinhyuk immediately dismissed that thought. No, it's impossible. The serial killer only targets hunters who belong to a guild. Then who on earth is this person in front of him? 10 to 13 minutes. The opponent never expected that his surprise attack wouldn't work. He's lucky that his face is covered with a mask. If he had exposed his bare face as it is, Jinhyuk would have clearly seen the look of embarrassment on his face. The mysterious man's dagger was heavily covered with highly concentrated paralytic potions. The power that the dagger packed was enough to paralyze an elephant. If even a small drop of the potion went under a person's skin, then that person would be done for. However, no matter how threatening the power of a weapon is, it's no use if the wielder cannot hit his target. Who the F are you? Kang Jin-hyeok, who quickly avoided the opponent's dagger, reached out to take off the man's mask. However, the mysterious man foresaw what Jinhyuk wanted to do. He stepped back just in time and began to use his camouflage skills again. As if watching a magic show, Jinhyuk was left in confusion when the person disappeared again. He has no clue what the mysterious man's purpose or reason was. He has some rough guesses, but he can't know for sure. Jinhyuk looked around while using his aura and divine power throughout his body. He's still nearby. A faint sound of footsteps was heard. The opponent's exact location couldn't be detected yet, but Jinhyuk is sure that he's still near. I'm the one at disadvantage here. Jinhyuk doesn't know where the opponent was or what he was doing. If this situation persists, the enemy might eventually find a gap and launch a surprise attack. Jinhyuk thought hard of a solution. And then, he started running as hard as he could. The hiding man suddenly saw Jinhyuk running and thought that Jinhyuk was trying to escape. Where are you going? The man had no intention of letting go of Jinhyuk. He wasn't going to give up until Jinhyuk surrenders the corpse of the new monster. The mysterious man running after Jinhyuk finally followed him out of the alley. As soon as they left the alley, the man realized Jinhyuk's true intentions. Jinhyuk wanted to lead them to large crowds. He led me to a place where there's a lot of witnesses. If you want to hide a tree, you should hide it in a forest. Hiding in a crowded place would make it difficult for the mysterious man to find Jinhyuk. It's not a bad idea, but you don't know who you're up against. Standing in the center of the crowd, the man demonstrated his enemy-searching skill. His surprise attack might be unsuccessful, but he was able to mark Jinhyuk the moment he avoided his dagger. As long as the mark was there, it was possible to find Jinhyuk with his enemy-searching skill. So you're over there. The opponent found out which building Jinhyuk was hiding in. How did he get to the department store that quick? It hasn't been that long since they went out of the alley. Kang Jin-hyeok was in a department store on the other side of the road. It's odd and almost impossible that Jinhyuk could reach that far given that there were two large crosswalks before it. I guess catching a new monster wasn't just because of luck. He was able to block a surprise attack too. This guy is really skilled. When the mysterious man first heard the rumor of a newbie hunter catching a new monster, he thought that it was the hunter's mere luck and not his skills. But now that he's dealing with Jinhyuk personally, his mind had changed. The hunter he thought was a common C-rank hunter was actually someone with considerable skills. He wished he had prepared more thoroughly, but he has no room for that now. I'll have to finish him before he detects me again. The man rushed into the department store. Contrary to his expectation, it wasn't that easy to catch Jinhyuk here. He grew more and more impatient as the minutes passed by. As soon as he saw Kang Jin-hyuk's face, the mysterious man rushed towards him with his dagger raised. When the mysterious man opened a glass door and entered, Jinhyuk, who was hiding right next to the door, immediately swung his fist. AHK. The man didn't expect that attack at all. He fell on the floor and rolled after taking in Jinhyuk's attack. The shock even removed the man's camouflage skills. The man barely managed to get up. The fist that broke his shield in one blow was now aiming for him. There was only one skill that the man had to prevent the attack from hitting him. Although the option was obvious, the magician hesitated on using that skill. Using that skill here is a bit. The man was troubled. However, when he was driven to a corner and on a brink of being attacked, the man eventually reached out to Jinhyuk. Flame Storm. Jinhyuk was caught in surprise when he heard the man shout a skill name, followed by flames emerging from his hands. The flame storm overturned Jinhyuk and the nearby civilians. The sprinklers burst from all over the ceiling, trying to control the flames, but the fire that overturned the department store did not die down at all. Yuahek, help. The fire was burning hard at the entrance of the department store, so the people couldn't easily evacuate. People tried to escape by breaking the windows. Ha ha ha. The man couldn't help but laugh despondently at what he's done. He didn't realize that his greed to get the new monster's body would lead to this. He regretted not having mastered various skills in advance. It's a good thing that I covered my face. The man thought that no one would find him if he ran away right now. It was regrettable that Kang Jin-hyeok, who was inflicted with his flames, can't show him the monster's whereabouts now. He shouldn't have followed him here. While everyone was still confused and in panic, the man got up from his seat and headed to the entrance of the department store. Peef. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. What a cheap person. I know, right? What? The man was frightened at what was happening at the moment. The man couldn't even open his mouth again when he saw Jinhyuk standing with his clothes burnt to a black crisp. How are you still alive? The mysterious man saw with his own eyes how Jinhyuk was hit directly by his flames. He should have been dead and burnt like a charcoal from that kind of attack. Ah, what the F? The man urgently reached out his hand again. He only hesitated at the first time he did it, but he can brazenly release his skill again now that the damage has been done. He had already attacked other hunters and harmed countless civilians. If he was to get caught here, he would be sentenced to life imprisonment or even death. The consequence of being a hunter was that punishments imposed on them are harsher than that of ordinary people. Rather than getting caught here, the man decided to cause another accident and escape. Flame Santo. Before he could finish saying the skill's name, he saw something suddenly fly towards him. However, it was too late before he noticed it. The object hit the man's head with a bang. The last thing the mysterious man saw was a thermos thrown by Jinhyuk with full power. Jinhyuk was aware that the man could die if he throws this thermos at full speed towards the man. Even though he knew that fact, he had no choice but to do it. Not only was it an act of self-defense, but Jinhyuk wants to protect the other people from further damage that the magician could inflict. Jinhyuk sat down after seeing the body of the mysterious man fall backward. It wasn't because of the guilt from murdering someone. Of course, it was a shocking thing to kill a man, but this opponent was someone who deserved to die. The reason why Jinhyuk's face was distorted was because of his characteristics as a hunter and a cleric. If a hunter kills a person, his stat window would show him as evil. This was something that other hunters could check. To make matters worse, hunters branded as evil could never use cleric skills. Even if cleric skills appear in his skill window, he won't be able to use them. This means that his divine power would disappear, and the aura he spent so much time learning would be unusable. Because of that FX, the man caused so many problems for Jinhyuk. He thought that the magician would behave if they were in a crowded place, but he never imagined that the man was crazy to do such a thing. Would it be like this if they stayed back at the alley? After a few seconds, a window popped up in front of Kang Jin-hyeok. Karma levels increased due to murder. Because a legitimate murder was not committed, the title, evil, is not added. The skill of cleric will be changed. You have leveled up. You've achieved the conditions hidden. For a second specialty change. Jinhyuk became confused as he read the notifications. Let's go and talk to him first. Jinhyuk was still staring at the scene of the incident when he noticed the two detectives approaching him. As their eyes met, Cho Kyungyeon showed her badge. You're Kang Jin-hyeok SSI. Yes, that's me. As Kang Jin-hyeok faced the detective, his expression and tone naturally hardened. He couldn't stand tall because he felt that to some extent, he was responsible for this incident. Cho Kyung-yeon interpreted Jinhyuk's body language as him being terrified that he had killed someone. The detective said some words to reassure him. "You acted out of self-defense. You're fine, you don't have to be so scared." "Self-defense. I killed a man. You're telling me I can get away with that so easily?" "Thanks." Kang Jin-hyuk's question was expected. Even if it was a bad man, it doesn't change the fact that he killed a person. In principle, the self-defense reasoning had to go to a proper trial to be recognized. However, this case was an exception. "If you tell me one thing, I can ensure that you won't have to go to trial." "Is that true?" "Of course. Because we have clear evidence against the other hunter." "Clear evidence?" Kang Jin-hyuk had no idea what the detective was referring to. "An evidence so clear that he wouldn't have to go to trial at all." Detective Cho asked Jinhyuk a question in order to make things clearer for him. "You have killed a man. A notification involving the word evil showed up for you, didn't it?" "Ah, how did you?" "Killing in the act of self-defense doesn't give you the title of evil. You can think of it as an open secret between detectives." Kang Jin-hyuk looked surprised. What he thought was something that only he knew of was actually widely known among detectives. "Wait, so should I keep this a secret? Should I not say anything about this?" "That's right. It would be inconvenient for us detectives if this information becomes widely known. When someone kills another, the title, evil, is attached to their name unconditionally." That's what most hunters thought. That misconception is actually what people of authority use in order to keep the hunters from killing, even in the act of self-defense. It is indeed easier to have the hunters believe that any sort of killing would lead to them being titled as evil. If hunters were aware of the self-defense exception, it's a danger that some hunters would go around killing bad people like they were apostles of justice. That situation would lead to an increase in vigilantes and the sorts. The government and the association wanted the hunters to hunt monsters only. The government was careful not to let these hunters think that they were some sort of a movie superhero. "I see." Jinhyuk nodded after hearing the detective's explanation. "I will never tell anyone. I'd like to believe you, but this is a very important matter." Nothing was more fragile than a promise made in words. Cho Kyung-yeon gave a small brooch-shaped device to Kang Jin-hyuk. This was the usual procedure that they do. "From now on, please carry this device with you everywhere you go." "What is this?" "To put it bluntly, this is a surveillance device. If you say the 3 specific words that you're not supposed to say, we're going to get a signal." "What are those words?" "Murder, evil, self-defense. Those 3 words. If you don't keep this in mind, we'll see each other very often." Kang Jin-hyuk took the device. There's one thing he didn't understand though. Even if he can't say those 3 words, couldn't he just write the words instead? No matter how much he thought about it, the surveillance policy seemed a little bit sloppy. "Can I go home if I take this?" "Only this one device." Jinhyuk indirectly asked if there was another device that he needs to receive, but the answer that came back was negative. "Of course, I understand that you're under shock, so I recommend that you take a rest for a while." Cho Kyung-yeon didn't mention anything about the device's ability to surveillance what its wearer writes. However, the device given to Jinhyuk can actually do that. Hunters are careless because they don't think that such a function is technically possible. If Jinhyuk can prove that he's trustworthy, the detective would consider him to be a reliable person and retrieve the device within a year. However, if Jinhyuk tries to reveal this secret through handwriting, the surveillance level on him will go up further and more restrictions on his life would be applied. Cho Kyung-yeon intentionally didn't let Jinhyuk know of these things. The government and the association aren't as careless as you think. Hunters become sloppy when money becomes a variable. The government and the association have to be meticulous when dealing with this matter. In their experience, the most common reason hunters act that way was, "I bet he's got a hidden skill or a hidden class." The detective didn't say it out loud, careful to not let the light-mouthed junior spread unconfirmed rumors. Sure enough though, the first thing Kang Jin-hyuk did when he got home was to check his hidden class and hidden skill. 14 to 17 minutes. Obtaining a hidden class wasn't usually a challenge. Rumor has it that hunters can get it once they meet special conditions when they level up. Hunters who earned their hidden class had no way of figuring out what those special conditions were because most of them keep it a secret from everyone. Even if certain conditions were satisfied, there was no guarantee that the individual would obtain a hidden class. Until this morning, Kang Jin-hyeok never expected to obtain a hidden class. Having an exclusive dungeon in his home was already too much a miracle. He thought it was greedy to ask for more. Well, I'm not really comfortable with the process of how I got this hidden class. Looking at his status window, Jinhyuk sighed quietly. Killing someone in self-defense even gave him a reward. Having a hidden class is certainly a big benefit, but that doesn't mean he's completely happy about it. Let's take a good look at this first. The first thing he checked was his new skills. Instead of the usual heal and cure skills, some new ones appeared in the window. Hard skill, a tough skin that protects the user from spears and knives. Current skill level, D. Skill effect, while using this skill, all damages suffered are reduced by 20%. The skill can also be used for other people. Skill duration, 120 seconds. Cool down time, 30 seconds. Abnormal condition resistance, increases resistance to abnormal conditions such as poisoning, sleep, and fainting. Current skill level, C. Skill effect, resistance to abnormal conditions increases up to 30% when the opponent's skill level is lower than the user's. Skill duration, continuous. After checking the skill descriptions, Jinhyuk was able to understand what the two skills meant. The skill that replaced his heal still had a protective effect, and the one that replaced cure also had similar effects. Although the new skills were more aggressive and self-centered, the essence itself hasn't changed that much. The same was true with the Holy Shield, of course. Defense field, rush towards something with the speed of a train. Current skill level, C. Skill effect, identifies and locks on an opponent with 15 meters. Physical defense increases by 10% during the rush. Cooldown time is initialized once an opponent is identified. Cooldown time, 60 seconds. Looking at his new skills, it doesn't seem like he's a conventional cleric anymore. Protection skills and defense enhancing rushing, plus resistance to abnormal conditions. It definitely sounds like a tanker's skill set. Anyway, the most important are the skills related to divine power. Kang Jin-hyeok has been using mana and divine power according to how Lucia taught him. Thanks to that, he was able to handle the power of aura. Kang Jin-hyeok checked his hidden skills with a trembling heart. With serious eyes, Jinhyuk was staring at a new skill that appeared in his status window. Distinction. User can check an opponent's EOB has on you. Current skill level, C. Skill effect. User can quantify and confirm the opponent's accumulated EOB with karma. The skill was clearly a passive skill as the skill duration and cooldown time were not specified. As of the moment, Jinhyuk couldn't know exactly what this skill could do. The word karma was just a game terminology for him. He had no idea what the word meant for sure. EOB, retribution. He found the most plausible meaning by searching through the internet, but he was still confused. Jinhyuk looked at the mirror to see just what this skill meant. When he focused on his reflection in the mirror, a number appeared above his head. 64. What does that figure mean? Since he doesn't have a reference on what the number means, he's unsure whether it was high or low. Should I go around town so I could estimate an average score? Although he was really curious about this, Jinhyuk actually didn't feel like going outside at the moment. He dealt with an extremely difficult situation outside just a few hours ago. It was too dangerous to walk outside right now, especially since he's not sure if the guy who attacked him was working with other people. Alright, there was another skill. Jinhyuk checked on another skill that he had forgotten for a while. Judgment. Ability value and additional effects are given when dealing with enemies with high karma levels. Skill level, none. Skill effect. Effect increases in proportion to the opponent's karma value. Above 200 to 20% increase. Above 300 to 30% increase. Above 500 to 50% increase. If the enemy has more than 200, the title of evil will not be given and the penalty for murder will disappear. Kang Jin-hyeok turned speechless for a while. It sounds like a strong skill, which is a good thing. He's not entirely sure yet about the meaning of the karma numbers, but that's okay for now. However, the last part of the skill description was even more difficult to process. Not having the penalty for murder could be good if it's viewed as it is. But Jinhyuk was not comfortable with how he acquired this skill. Aren't jobs and skills determined by the person's usual behavior and personality? Come to think of it, he did have regrets when he killed that mysterious man. But he didn't hesitate to do it at the moment. Still, giving me these skills as if I'd be a ruthless murderer in the future is just... Oh, is it done already? That's right. Was easier than expected. The dwarf picked up the bat and handed it to Jinhyuk. As soon as Jinhyuk grabbed the handle, he felt a sharp sensation as if a static electricity was being charged inside him. That feeling was proof that the enchantment worked successfully. You can charge it up to 3 times in advance. It takes 30 minutes for a single charge. The dwarf pointed his finger to the corner, signaling for Jinhyuk to try the bat's power. Jinhyuk laughed in vain when he looked over to where the dwarf was pointing and saw a goblin tied up to a stake. When did you prepare that? Since I finished the job early, I decided to take a stroll for fun. The goblin struggled to escape, but the dwarf's tightly tied rope did not budge. I feel a little sorry seeing it tied up like that. So you want me to let it go? No, you did it for me, so I'd have to show how thankful I am. Jinhyuk prepared to make a strike. How do I shoot the lightning? Do I have to say a spell or something? Pooh-ha-ha-ha. You think you'd have time to say a spell in the middle of a fight? It'll work. Just imagine it happening in your head. Hearing dwarf's answer, Jinhyuk was a bit disappointed. Saying some spell would have been cooler though. Looks like the dwarf doesn't have a tinge of imagination. Jinhyuk thought of lightning. Sure enough, some blue sparks began to appear at the end of the bat. Lucia watched carefully from about 3 steps away. Although she was obviously intensely staring at him, Jinhyuk didn't notice it because he was focused on the bat. Imagine the lightning. Jinhyuk drew a scene in his head where he swung the bat and lightning would be fired from it. As soon as he did, lightning went rushing through from the tip of the bat toward the goblin. Whoosh! It took less than a second until the goblin burned like charcoal. The lightning didn't just obliterate the tied-up goblin, it spread and scattered towards another direction. Screech! Some nearby goblins screeched as they were also struck by the lightning. Given Kang Jin-hyuk's skill, it wasn't just 1 or 2 goblins. The dwarf smiled big as he heard the screams from quite a distance. As expected of the Oriharukin. No, it exceeded my expectations. Jinhyuk was also grinning. He can't believe that the monster that troubled him so much has now brought him an incredible power. At this rate, it's very easy to deal with multiple monsters at once. Of course the power is truly amazing, but what's more surprising was its fuel efficiency. Lucia's eyes suddenly turned protective. After looking Jinhyuk up and down, Lucia was convinced. The energy that surrounded Jinhyuk now was unusual. There was ordinary mana flowing out of his hands. You've been acting strange. Lucia flicked the stick of the candy bar like a cigarette butt. You? What happened while you were outside? The way she asked it was only half certain. Jinhyuk inadvertently swallowed his saliva with the sudden interrogation that began without notice. In the dim and crumbling depths of the dungeon, 2 adventurers found themselves at a crossroads, between life and the unknown consequences of their past decisions. So your divine power disappeared? Lucia asked, her brows knitting in concern. Her voice echoed slightly in the silent dungeon walls. Yeah, that's why I brought along this strange device, Kang Jin-hyuk replied, clutching the odd contraption tightly, as though it were his lifeline in the chaos of their current situation. Lucia eyed the device warily, her voice laced with caution. But that device, are you sure it's okay to remove it like this? Normally, no, but since that old man said it's fine, there must be a way. He's got a real talent for stuff like that, so we can trust him, right? Jin-hyuk's tone carried a forced confidence, as though he was trying to convince both of them. Lucia sighed, conceding reluctantly. True, he's reliable when it comes to things like this. She couldn't shake off her unease, glancing at the device again. As the tension settled, their conversation drifted into an unusual topic. By the way, a karma value that quantifies evil deeds, so that's why you were giving me and the short guy that weird look earlier, Lucia mentioned offhandedly, her eyes narrowing in recollection. Jinhyuk smirked. So, What's my karma level? 82. The highest among the three of us, she said bluntly, with the casual indifference of someone stating the weather. I'm at 64, and the old man is at 72. Well, considering the rough life I've led, that's not surprising, Jinhyuk remarked, his voice darkening. I had to do everything I could to survive. Lucia frowned slightly. Even so, the difference between you and me is only 20 points. I've only killed one person. Whether that 20-point gap is big or small is still uncertain, Jinhyuk muttered, a grave look crossing his face. Do you know how many people I've killed? Lucia's eyes widened slightly at his ominous tone. Come to think of it, in the place I used to live, there were saints who could distinguish good from evil with their eyes. I'm far from being a saint, Jinhyuk interrupted, his voice laced with bitterness. Who said you're a saint? Lucia retorted, rolling her eyes. I'm just saying that kind of ability exists in our world too. Their banter faded as reality struck. Jinhyuk's eyes sharpened. Anyway, now's not the time to be searching for a mine. We need to analyze your ability first. Lucia blinked, taken aback. I appreciate it, but why are you so interested in my ability? Because I find you entertaining. Way more than this stupid mine search. Jinhyuk grinned, his casual demeanor returning. Lucia's lips curved into a rare smile. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. But the dungeon walls couldn't hold them forever. Staying in this place won't help us understand the karma value. Let's head outside, Jinhyuk suggested, standing up abruptly. If you're worried about being attacked, I'll protect you. Lucia hesitated for a moment. What should we do? I feel bad for the old man, but I kind of want to solve this issue first. Jinhyuk nodded in agreement, pulling out a shimmering stone from his bag. Return stone. No matter where we are, we can return to a predetermined location. As they prepared to leave the dungeon, Jinhyuk threw a curious glance at Lucia. Are you sure you're properly using your camouflage magic? I told you, it's definitely hidden by magic, so stop worrying, Lucia huffed, though her eyes darted around warily. For someone claiming that, you're still drawing a lot of attention. Really? Maybe it's because I didn't conceal my beauty, Lucia teased. Yeah, sure, let's go with that, Jinhyuk sighed, shaking. Suddenly, a voice cut through the evening air. Hey, stunning beauty, we're having an event at our bar right now. Beautiful ladies can enjoy up to 5 cocktails for free. Lucia's eyes lit up. It's free. Let's have a drink. Jinhyuk's instincts kicked in. Lucia. Wait, but it was too late. Moments later, inside the bar, Jinhyuk spotted something alarming. His eyes locked onto a man in the corner. His karma value glowed in Jinhyuk's vision, 300. Lucia took a sip of her drink, a pleased smile on her face. I kind of like this place. Before Jinhyuk could warn her, the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The drink, it's laced with poison. He slammed his hand on the table, standing up abruptly. All right, he drank the poison-laced drink that paralyzes with a single drop. Lucia froze, her eyes darting to Jinhyuk, but before she could act, Jinhyuk's voice cut through the tension. Status effect resistance skill activated. Poison neutralized. The thug, realizing his plan had failed, groaned in disbelief. What are you? Jinhyuk's voice was ice cold. What do you think? You're about to meet your end. The thug's bravado wavered as he stumbled back. You don't know what you're dealing with. The Titan Guild, they'll massacre every last one of you. Jinhyuk's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint flashing in them. Massacre? Huh, tell me more. Lucia crossed her arms, watching the scene unfold with a grim expression. Looks like we've uncovered something bigger than we thought. Jinhyuk's grip on the thug's collar tightened, lifting him off his feet. The man's face was a mixture of fear and defiance, but Jinhyuk's gaze was unwavering. The Titan Guild, huh? Why would they be involved in something like this? Jinhyuk muttered, his mind racing through possibilities. His tone was calm, but beneath the surface, he could feel the threads of a far larger conspiracy weaving together. The thug's voice trembled. You think you're something, don't you? But you're too late. Our guild controls this region, and once the Elan's elixir is perfected, no one will stand in our way. Lucia, still sitting with her drink, finally spoke up. The Elan's elixir. What's that? The thug sneered, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. A drug that doubles your stats. Strength, agility, magic, everything. But the ingredients, you'd never stomach it. Jinhyuk's eyes darkened. What ingredients? The thug's smirk widened. Countless young women. That's what it takes. Sacrifices. Lucia's drink slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Her eyes blazed with fury. You're making a drug that kills innocent people for power. Jinhyuk felt his blood boil. So that's it. You're all just using people as ingredients for your little potion. The room was dimly lit, casting long shadows across the cold stone floor. The tension in the air was palpable, each breath weighing heavier than the last. I'm shocked too, Kosuke said, slamming his fist on the table. His voice echoed in the small chamber. I can't believe some crazy guy here is trying to make it. What? That drug existed in your world too? Across from him, Azora's face was grim, her eyes clouded with old memories. Yeah, she began, her voice barely a whisper. We had something called the Queen's Tear Elixir in our world. She clenched her fists, her knuckles white. A close friend of mine was sacrificed as fertilizer for that elixir when I was young. Kosuke blinked, momentarily speechless. The silence between them deepened. Azora's gaze hardened as she continued, her voice now filled with cold fury. Years later, after reaching platinum rank, I personally wiped out that organization. Kosuke had noticed her grim demeanor since they arrived, but now he understood why. So, that's why you've had that grim look on your face, he said quietly, feeling the weight of her past. Azura nodded. And now, it seems history is repeating itself. Her eyes flicked to the door, as if expecting an enemy to burst through at any moment. So, what are we going to do? The elixir is almost complete, they say. We need to wipe them out before that happens. Kosuke's voice was resolute, determination burning in his eyes. Suddenly, the door swung open and a figure hurried inside, breathless. It's me, the figure said, panting. We have a problem. Park Min-jae is dead. The air in the room grew cold. Kosuke straightened, his face darkening. Dead. It doesn't seem to be an internal dispute. It's hard to believe another guild did this, the figure replied, still catching his breath. What's strange is that only Park Min-jae was killed and the attacker left. This method wouldn't be used by another guild or someone on our side. Kosuke's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. Find out who did this. Yes, understood, the figure responded, swiftly leaving the room. As the door closed behind him, Kosuke clenched his jaw. I'll find them soon, he muttered, eyes narrowing with determination.